Yeah, so this video was supposed to be uploaded at the end of 2025, but if you know, you know, so that didn't end up going through. But whatever, we'll move on and just do it now. I have loved putting all of these together and playing through all of these games so many times, so let's wrap this up and go back through to truly find out which colors were the easiest or hardest to avoid. And we'll keep track of the score along the way to see which color was the most successful. I want to find a winner for this whole thing. I'm gonna cover the rules one more time just to make sure everyone is on the same page. Each game, we start from the very beginning, and if we have to touch the specific color at any point, we switch to the next one. Anything attached to Mario himself does not count, like his clothes, which I know everyone is gonna mention. Anything in the background does not matter because we're not physically touching those things, so no sky, no clouds, nothing like that. And each area is only valid if we have our full moveset. What I mean by this is in a 2D hub world, for example, we can basically only move to each level and we can't walk freely. But in a 3D hub, we do have our full moveset and can basically travel however we want. The former does not count, the latter does count. Alright, glad we got that covered. There's a lot to get through, so let's jump in and start with our first color, red. Let me tell you something about this game. It's old as heck, and because of that, color was not as fleshed out in games as it is today. So I think I can count on one hand how many red things there are here. This Koopa, which we can walk right over, the Spinies that Lakitu throws down, which we can just avoid by sprinting, and these mushrooms in the warp zone. But speaking of that, there's also these pipes, which I know some people are gonna say they're red because of the console, but they are primarily orange and brown. I'm still gonna go in, but even if I didn't, I could still get to World 8 by going through the other levels normally. Once we're in the final world, just jump over the occasional red thing that might pop up in your way, and in the castle, don't fall into the lava. Phew, a good thing I wasn't planning to. My lava bath got moved to Friday, so let's run to the final bridge where, thank goodness, the red is on the bottom. That means Bowser is done for. This game was easily cleared. May not have had to touch a red here, but there is something red you could touch. That wonderful subscribe button. Please click it would mean a lot. We'll still play on the All-Stars version for this game just to have a different color palette. Here's a big difference this game has to offer, though. The falling platforms. I want to avoid those because I see some light stripes and a lot of red there. Unfortunately, in 1-2, we can't make the jump to the secret exit path without them. Alright, guess we'll go into this pipe and beat the stage. But right after, the same platform comes up with this gap. No way to make this jump without using the lift. Are we out of options at this point? I thought so, but then I remembered there's another bro in town. Luigi is known for jumping higher than Mario, and that jump is actually enough to get up here with no platform at all. But when trying to get to the World 4 pipe, there's another couple of platforms you're supposed to use. I spent a while trying to find a setup for this, but I couldn't get it. There was only one more option, taking this vine to the World 3 warp. But yet again, in the sky level, there's more platforms that are required. So basically, there were 3 paths to choose from, and they all failed to the same thing. Maybe there's a chance some solution is found, but for now, I'm marking this impossible. We start this one up coming out of a seemingly red door. That's not a good sign. And there's another one to leave this place at the bottom. Even if you make the argument that we don't have to touch the door itself, it doesn't matter because look at all this outside. Bushes, enemies, and a plethora of logs. One of which cannot be bypassed without walking over it. I considered whether this was actually red or maybe if it was brown, but come on, it's the same color as the red Shy Guys and Mario's clothes. What's he known for wearing again? Oh yeah. This one seemed a little questionable because I didn't want to grab any mushrooms for obvious reasons, but I also kind of had to based on the route I usually take. I think I have a workaround though. In level 3, we can despawn the red Koopa to stand on the white block and run behind the stage for 1 warp whistle. Then we can get a power-up from this Toad House. Even if it is a mushroom, it's fine because he can get the power-up without actually touching it in a level. Then the Tanuki leaf can be equipped, and in the fortress, that's useful for flying over this wall and grabbing a second warp whistle. Perfect, now we can skip directly to World 8, and maybe it's just because of the dark nature here, but I barely found a single red thing in any of these stages. And anytime I did, it was easily avoidable. I was also fortunate enough to not get pulled by the hands at all. Although, as I started the fortress, I realized that I screwed up, because you need some sort of power-up to get in this door, but I lost it at an airship stage, and it's not like I can just re-power up because I can't touch mushrooms. So you actually have to keep it all the way to this point, but if you manage to do that and actually break the blocks, everything else after that is cake. All the way until the final castle, that is. Because for some reason, these bricks just appear for the grand finale, and Bowser must break through them to defeat himself. So we will be using the colored version of this game. At first, it seems like there's going to be no problem here. All there is for red is these moving platforms at the end of the level, but we don't have to use them, so everything looks good. Until you realize in level 2, there's a bunch of them over huge gaps. Unbelievably, the first gap... Jesus Christ. Screamed in my ear. Oh my goodness. Unbelievably, the first gap can actually be crossed with the right setup, but there is no way we're clearing this next one, and we don't have any flying power-ups to help us out here. Let's start this off in a cool way by completely clearing this line of red Koopas. Now I have unlocked full red avoidance power. I guess that power works pretty well because there is nothing to worry about in the first world at all, except for this door perhaps. It's clearly bright red, but I don't know if we actually touch this thing. Things in the background don't count, and all we do is stand in front of the door and press up, then the screen transitions. I never see a point that makes it clear that we even open this thing at all. I'm prepared to get called out for this, but I'm gonna keep going. And a good thing I did, because there's nothing else in the way. By taking all the secret exits and going through the Star World, we can soar to the end of the game. Literally, because the cape is super helpful. It is no problem reaching the final Bowser fight, and there's no red in sight here. I'm glad we were able to complete something with graphics that were at least a little bit better. I'm glad we have the kind of open-world style with this game to make it easier to spot problems. Well, the intro level can be cleared with little to no issue, but then I already know some zones are holding us up. This one, because this is the rare exception where Mario can touch himself, of course there's a lot of red inside, and definitely this zone too, simply because of the many red bricks that lie beneath this pipe. Unfortunately, red equates to Halloween. Actually, it kind of goes with every holiday now that I'm thinking about it. It's so multi-purposeful. Yeah, this one starts all fine and stuff, but after running to the castle and failing Lakitu skip, you have to go inside the building and step on a red carpet to do so. There is no way around it, and even if there was, there's just an entire red floor leading to the first painting. When thinking about this game, there was something that I had a hunch would screw me over. No, it's not this thing, because we can shoot water to hit it. I was talking about PD Piranha. However, it does seem as though we can barely land a ground pound on this guy while only touching the green part of his body. So we kind of got saved there, but the thing is, 2 shines later is a red coin mission. Yes, coins that are red. It's literally in the name! You never know how things are gonna go in this series. Also, here's where it really started to become annoying that I couldn't get power-ups because of the whole mushroom issue. Assuming you can actually play the game good, getting past the first level is no problem, and we can take the secret exit in level 2 to skip right to the fortress. Usually I'd take the secret exit here as well, but the red pipe behind there is a slight issue. Going the normal exit is fine for this stage, and it's always nice to see Bowser Jr. get a good stomping. But a bit later, there's a level in the sky with this platform. I think I'm seeing every single warm color on that thing, red included. From what I remember, I could go a pretty good distance into this game without finding any red at all. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. I could do everything needed in the first star and get all the way to the end and not being able to mess up even if I wanted to. Goes to show that in space, red is not as common somehow. But no matter how far we go, it only takes one thing to end it all. And that one thing happens to be a piranha plant in Good Egg Galaxy. You can jump on it or shoot it with a star bit, but you still gotta kick it after that. No other way for that crucial vine to grow out of the ground. Here's another game where secret exits are very important. And now I can't get mushrooms here, but I can touch the checkpoint pole to power up, and then get the orange propeller mushroom. This is very useful. But one part that I was worried about was in level 3, because you can't actually see the secret pipe above the screen. So I couldn't remember what color it was. Thankfully, the other side confirmed it was green, so we're all set. And now we can take the cannon to World 5. Just have to make sure to not make the Wiggler angry, and not be in the way of the number 5 on this raft. But between that, there's the first Iggy Fortress with this door at the end. Is this gonna be a problem? I don't think he touched it. Besides that, it is a totally clear path to the cannon to World 8. Although because it's the lava world, it's very naturally red. None of these blocks or meteors are required to touch, but then there's this platform. I questioned it for a second, but I checked, and it's more orange, which makes sense because that's the color it usually is. So we can keep going. Clear the secret path for the world to skip right to the airship, and again, I spotted nothing red for the entire thing. Bowser Jr. is defeated, but what about the true final castle? Well, I thought we'd be able to do it, but the game had other plans because the pipes leading to each section of this place just had to be red. You really just dangled that victory in front of my face, didn't you? The second Galaxy game also has a similar meta of not having that much red to worry about. Honestly, for both Stars and Sky Station, a part of me was worrying I was zoning out and just missing the red. But no, there really was none in the way. And now the second star in Yoshi's Galaxy is a problem because you gotta eat Spinies. And I think the red in his mouth would be enough to end it. Fortunately, we don't have to complete that one because we already have 3 stars. But if you thought the day was saved, think again, because Spin Dig Galaxy is next. There are some cool skips that can be done without the spin drill, but eventually you gotta grab it. And look where Mario is standing when using it. Even if that doesn't convince you, just before the boss, we make a pit stop on Toad's ship. Oh, funny how it just lands us right there. Sometimes I question if I should love Captain Toad as much as I do. Personally, I'm excited to see how this one goes because I don't have all the levels burned into my memory. I can't imagine we'll get super far, but I'll try my best. I do know that there is a secret pipe in the second level that will be useful. Classic setup right here to warp us over to World 2. And now all of these levels are required, so if we get tripped up at all, that's it. And things seem to be going decently at the start of here, but as I strolled up on this stage, I got slightly concerned. And turns out it was warranted because it immediately starts us on the red part of the Mario platform. I mean, I can't blame them for that spawn point, but it's not what we need right now. here's another game that is really bright and really colorful. As we've learned in other challenges, level 1 features pretty much every color known to man and woman. But when keeping in mind that most of the blocks are semi-solid, they can just be ran right through, making this an easy finish. But the fun stops right after with this peculiar setup. The POW blocks have a red stripe on the top and on the bottom where it's supposed to be hit, and acting as a tutorial, they are supposed to be pounded to enter the pipe. If there was a way to get on top, I could break through them manually, but I could not find a way to jump high enough. Unfortunate that our fate was sealed just like that. We can start this one up like any usual challenge, except we still can't get either of the power-ups. At least I can use the checkpoint and then grab a fire flower in level 2. Speaking of that, what do we think about these crystals? I've always considered them pink, so they're fine for this. Good thing, because we can use them to go up here and grab the secret exit. Except in this water level, it immediately starts us with 1 foot on a red pipe. Seriously? I guess that path is a no-go. But the other way isn't so good either because of the castle at the end. Remember how you board each Koopaling ship in this game? Well, how do you get there? A cannon with a red stripe on top. Wow, my 8-year-old self never thought entering this would be problematic. This one also has, potentially, a lot of required levels, but at least the power-ups this time aren't holding us up. Level 1 is a breeze, and level 2 isn't much different, except the secret pipe happens to be a dangerous color, so we actually have to go through everything, and it eventually leads us to Mount Beanpole. Oh, and what a great spot to start on. Actually, wait a minute. Everyone thinks of these as red, but technically only the edge is red. The part I'm standing on is pink. Ha! You thought you had me there. Also, this time I have a fire flower to take down the piranha plant at the top, and we're done. But none of that can save us from the World 1 castle. And no, I'm not talking about this carpet in the entering cutscene. I'm talking about after the Bowser car battle. We go into the box, and yeah, here's where it ends. It was a good try, though. So what's the rule for this game? Because Cappy is red, I consider him to still be a player in the game. So Cappy himself won't count, but he also has to avoid red. That's an issue for the Cap Kingdom doors, but if we throw him in just the right spot, he can open it by hitting the gold cap. This allows us to get through both doors, defeat Topper, and go to Cascade, where all we have to do is capture the Chain Chomp when he's not angry, and that's basically the only issue here. I know we stand on the Odyssey once it's fixed, but this is a cutscene. It doesn't count. It's fine. What's not fine, however, is Sand Kingdom, because look at this. What color is the sand? I think it's fair to say that when most people picture a desert, they think of tan or orange, and that's what it looks like here at certain angles, but when the camera is tilted up, the lighting changes and it appears darker. I don't know about this one. You could make the argument for any of these, really. So comment what you think and we'll come to an agreement. Just in case, though, I did move on to Wooded and saw if I could actually complete this without touching any of the red metal. And you can kind of do it by using the random set of bushes that are all over everything. Deep Woods also has a ton of moons to help, but with the piranha plant unable to be killed, it seems just out of reach. Honestly, I went through all this effort, but I didn't need to because there's so many moon colors in this game, so we're gonna hit red once we reach Bowser's Kingdom. Despite everything I said, this game is definitely a fail, but we had a lot of fun along the way. Oh, this one's gonna be fun to talk about. So here's the thing. We can go around the red carpet on the ship, not touch the glowing blocks, and there might be some red on the cat shines, but we can jump and hit the back of it, which is gold. Then here is where things become much more open. And I have a strategy. I call it Operation Freeloader. Just send Bowser Jr. out to get stuff, and you take the credit. This is useful for getting the cat shards because they are fully red, but now that doesn't matter. I won't go over over everything in this game, but here are the basics. There were quite a few things that were obviously red that I could work around, or bosses where Bowser Jr. could do all the work. And for the Bowser battles, I tried to avoid all the spikes since they appear to have red on the bottom, and when clawing Bowser, I always hit him from the side. Pretty much the only questionable part was when I reached this area. Now, I did check the color finder, and it said it was more of a brown, so I let it slide. I did not go up Mount Magmeow, though. I just did the jump to skip to the boss, and I jumped past these blocks that turn red using a Tanuki. With all of that said, after a long time, I was able to reach 50 shines and get to the final battle. I know the ground looks red right now, but that's really just the lighting. For the fight itself, one thing that worried me were the boost panels. I had been avoiding them this whole time, but I wasn't sure if I could get through this without them. Thankfully, you can jump over every single one and still get enough speed with Plessy to make the hit count. That means, by some miracle, it actually is possible to beat this game without touching red. Just so you know, I'm not using multiplayer for this, so no clipping out on the overworld, but a lot of what this game involves is jumping between all of the red note blocks when you see this pattern. It's easy, if you have enough room above you at least. What's nice about this game is that it's much more open, and you just have to collect a certain amount of seeds in the levels given. There were still some issues though, like this jump that I ran into. If this was a normal 2D Mario, that would have been it, but the parachute badge actually makes it possible to do this sick wall jump. Down the road, I ran into a group of levels that all had issues making them impossible, but I did manage to find exactly 5 seeds on this island to go to World 2, and was able to clear a decent amount there. But once I reach this point, there's a surprise airship attack. And how do you defeat this thing? Oh, you know, just a big, shiny red button at the end. Probably the most satisfying way to finish, but this is where it ends. Avoiding red in Mario games is like avoiding putting sauce on pizza. It can work sometimes, but it just feels wrong, and disappointment will occur. But you know what? A score of 3 to start off with is nothing to cry about. Also, I would like to say that in Galaxy 1, I did kind of mess up, because it turns out you can triple jump past this plant to get to the next part of the mission. However, the second star in Honey Hive Galaxy is required, which ends with this boss fight, so the fail is still inevitable. That's the issue. Obviously, there's gonna be red everywhere, so if you don't take advantage of those older games with less colors, you're kinda screwed. Although, there was one modern game that had a victory, which was a pleasant surprise. With how open world Bowser's Fury is, it might be a savior for a lot of colors. But will this score hold up, or could we do even better with our next color, orange? I've said before that this game does not have a lot of color variation. Basically, all of these warm colors aren't the most common because of the amazing hardware that was around back then. However, I know of one thing that is definitely orange here. That would be these here moving platforms. And that is an issue because those are very useful to jump above the screen and go to the warp zone. But now we actually have to go through this pipe. Oh, just kidding. We can actually do a fun little trick to glitch through the wall and reach the warp zone that way. This means we can get to World 4 early, and in the second level, there is another warp zone, but let's just say the colors in the above ground for that are less favorable. At least there's a different warp zone back underground to go to World 5 instead, but that's a pretty big setback, and it's not going to end too well for us because those orange platforms show up again in the next sky level. And with this setup where there's 2 right next to each other makes this jump impossible. I thought maybe I could bounce on a bullet, but that doesn't really give you any more distance in this game. So unfortunately, there is no way past this, and we have ourselves a fail. Okay, so we may have an update in graphics moving to this game, but the amount of orange has a very significant downgrade. Let me show you. In this case, the moving platforms are now mainly red, and sure, there might be a sliver on top closer to an orange shade, but if anything, that's more of a shadow or a lighting thing. I say we're off the hook this time, and that is quite convenient, because if we're allowed to touch these things, then this whole game is basically free all the way through. By finding all all the secrets and taking all the warps to get to World 8, we can get to the end with absolutely no issue. Maybe some orange things still exist, like the background of levels, or maybe in these fireballs for the castle, but come on, I'm not wanting to touch those things. I'm not insane. We can sneak right past our boy Bruce and our boy Bowser, avoiding all of the orange and saving Peach for our first win. Let's go. Honestly, I wasn't completely sure how far I was gonna get here because there is still quite a bit of colors I'm not sure about. Oh, the joys of the NES. The biggest question mark is definitely whenever we see this type of ladder, as well as some specific sand blocks around. They do look kind of orange at first, but after checking, we have determined that these are actually more of a gold color, which is obviously closer to yellow. And that means none of these levels on our path should be a problem at all. There's a few warps that can be taken to skip to World 4, and later all the way to World 7. And this game can be beaten easily because there is just no orange at all. I don't know what to say. Now, this all might have just been Mario's dream, but let me tell you what my dream is. For you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, of course. Would you consider making that dream a reality and doing so? Because it would mean the world to me. Now let's see if we can get any more victories. I wish it was a more interesting discussion, but there's really no challenge or obstacles at all with this one either. I think the only orange thing in this game is like the quicksand that makes an appearance in World 2, but we can just skip right over that with the warp whistles. Then none of these airships are gonna stop us, and thankfully this time Bowser's Castle does not have a dangerous color. It is possible once again to make it all the way to the end and defeat that final boss. I really thought we might get another success with this game, but look, it's already over. What, you don't believe me? I know it sounds crazy, but this is sand we're standing on, and it does have orange on it. The shading might not be recognizable as such, but this does confirm it. Unfortunately, we can't move at all here. At least I know this one will go a little bit better than the last one. So the main thing we'll be watching out for here are the Koopas, since their heads are now a bright orange. This is no problem for a little bit because none of the Koopas here are in the way, and the next few levels just have none altogether. But then it comes time for the first castle, which is a known run killer. This orange Koopa rule also applies to Iggy himself in the boss room, and there is a definite part of his face that we have to avoid. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't a fire flower solve this? Well, yes, it would, but I can't grab that because it is also orange on top. And because of that same reason, I can't do the orb glitch to skip the fortress. With all of our solutions run down, the only thing left to do is jump on the boss and take the loss. Alright, like I said before, I'm gonna enjoy this style because with all of the zones in this game, we should be able to quickly figure out if anything will get in the way before we go too deep into it. And after the first level is complete, I seem to find one problematic zone, that being the macro zone. We start by dropping very close to the lava underground, so there's gonna be some brighter colors in here. Now, this dirt isn't actually the problem, it's just the moving platforms, because we're back to that. The main part of these is orange, and there is a point where we're gonna have to step on them to get under this wall. I can't even use the carrot because that power-up is also orange. Very clearly no way around this. Okay, so you know how we got stopped before without entering the castle? Well, before, it was due to the carpet in front of the door. And now, it's gonna be because of the door itself. That is absolutely a bright, dangerous color. However, I have made the argument before that we may not have to touch that part of it. Look, Mario's hand just touches the knob to get it open, and then he just walks around it. I may have considered this valid, if it wasn't for this other door right after. Because now, instead of pulling, this one one is a push door, and Mario does something different. This time, he actually pushes it open with his left hand on the orange part, which is where I draw the line. Also, I know someone's gonna mention, well, what about doing a BLJ? I'm playing on the Switch version, so I can't do that. And I don't think I'd be able to do it even if I had the original. We did not make a lot of progress in the first 3D game, but let's try here. Very simple to avoid the orange and the goop, and then we can just spray it down. After sitting through all of the cutscenes, we spray more goop and take down Shadow Mario without any orange in sight. Things seemed promising heading into Bianco Hills, and then the game did this to me. Are you serious? This just had to be the color of the ground. It's also just salt in the wounds that we land perfectly with both of our feet on these two rocks, which are easily the most orange out of the whole bunch. Well, we can't move to avoid it upon loading in, and we can't skip this level. I did not think this one would finish so early either, but that's just the way it goes. Now that we're getting back to 2D, the game does not seem to be as harsh. There is nothing that is even remotely orange that we can touch throughout the first level, and the same goes for the second. In fact, if I was actually trying to touch orange, I would really have to search for it. It's possible this time to grab the blue shell suit and use that to take the secret exit inside the fortress to reach the cannon. Thankfully, this thing is all black and yellow, so no issue entering that to go to World 5. There's a few more things to watch out for here, like the top of these snowball throwing dudes, but overall this world is still pretty easy. The hardest part comes at the end in the ghost house because we have to avoid these pumpkin enemies as the platform is shaking, but they should eventually fall, and then you're in the clear. With that, the second cannon is reached to go to World 8, but since it's the lava world, now all of the blocks are orange, which is not ideal. It's not easy, but 8-1 can still be beaten. However, 8-2 has this going on. It's a water level, and the water is required to rise to get anywhere. There is absolutely no way up without hitting the switch, and that's not good because that switch is completely orange. Well, we had a good run. Anyone who is at least somewhat familiar with this game, you probably know what's up. Well, here on Earth, there's no orange at all to worry about, and we're all good if we avoid the fire from the meteors. There's also no problem wandering around this entire planet because there's not too many bright colors. But after talking to Rosalina, it comes time to take off with a launch star. And what color are these iconic things? You guessed it. Back to New Soup now, and here are the main things we have to watch out for. The orange semi-solid lines. We can go through them, we just can't land on top of them. There's no issue for the start of the game because there's not too many of them around. World 1 is a breeze, and once again, the cannon can be taken to World 5, but things get complicated here. Level 1 in this world requires a few difficult jumps, but it's nothing to sweat over. However, next up comes fighting this piranha plant in the middle. But that won't work because it spawns us on one of those orange lines. There is a way around this though, and it requires dying in 5-1 to move the vines, and then getting lucky enough for the plant to move away from you as you try to enter this part of the map. I didn't like the look of the Wiggler level up top, so I went down here, but that's not much better because of the heads on these enemies, and the orange on the logs. Maybe we can get around this though by landing on the edge of these things and then bouncing on all of the Koopas. It might be a little iffy, but we can make it over this way. But if you didn't think this should count, then don't worry. It doesn't matter because of the end. All that work for nothing, and I guess I have to do the Wiggler level now. Okay, so maybe there are some orange spots on the Wigglers, but technically I could avoid them by just bouncing on their heads, which are always completely yellow and turn red when I touch them. That makes it possible to get to the pipe, and unbelievably, it's possible to clear this whole section without touching a single single wiggler. So we actually are back on track. The fortress can be cleared with a few jumps to skip the springs. The raft is a little close to orange, but I let it slide, although I did have to make this jump at the end to get in the pipe. And then I had to avoid the light switches in the boo house, but it was still possible. This means after all this, we can make it to World 8. But if you saw the last video, you know what's coming next, because 8-2 yet again has a semi-solid line right at the beginning. The lighting does make it look a little bit darker, but that is still orange, and it had to spawn us right on top of it. After all the time we spent on the last game, I don't think I have to drag this one out too much, and you all know what's about to happen anyway. We get done with the intro and see Bowser at the castle, and then the Lumas tell us to launch into space. Once again, by using a launch star that has an amazing paint of orange. Before starting this game, I already knew of something that was going to be slightly concerning. Now, it had nothing to do with the first level, that was a cakewalk. The problem comes in the second stage, because usually I would jump up at the end and go over here for a warp, but this pipe is, of course, orange. Alright, guess we're taking this other exit instead. That means we cannot skip any level in all 8 of these worlds. I can't imagine that's gonna go well. It does for the next couple of stages, but then it's time for the castle, and you know what? None of the fire or lava is an issue at all, since they're always easy to avoid, and Bowser can be defeated just like always. The problem is a common method of travel in this game, the warp box. And the color that they just had to choose for this thing is the one we don't want right now. Quite sad, I must say. So the last 2 games in this series went pretty well. Does that mean we're going to be able to close the deal this time? It seems to be going pretty well right away, since there's just the orange blocks in the background here to avoid. Then the next 2 levels have nothing to worry about, but those orange semi-solid lines make a return here, and they are all over this castle. I actually did see if it was at all possible to climb this stage without touching any of them. There's quite a few spots to land that aren't orange, and by wall jumping in a lot of places, we can make a decent amount of progress, although things run out at the halfway mark because there's this long orange line and a block that is too high to jump up to. I could kind of clip the side of it, but it was never enough to actually get the wall jump off, and that snake block above might just get in the way regardless. For now, I have to mark this game as impossible, but I am thinking that maybe this one could be cleared. I would be glad if anyone is able to prove me wrong. These platforms seem like a pretty tough cookie for this challenge. I'm willing to bet that's going to be the thing that ends this game as well. And you know what? I'd be correct. Way sooner than I expected to, because we can't even start the second level without spawning right on one. Man, this series just got harsher as it went on. I think it'll be better going back to these 3D games now. You shouldn't have to worry about those dang platforms this time. In fact, a lot is available to us right away in this game. We can grab the catsuit in the first level, and we can take the secret pipe in the second, all with very minimal orange to get away from. The desert world might seem problematic at first, but all of the sand we're walking across, I'm calling yellow. But I must admit, when getting to the shadow level, it becomes difficult to tell what color anything is. We're just gonna say everything back here is fine. Besides that issue, there's a lot of things in the next few stages that might be close to orange, but not close enough. That is until 2-tank. This level features cannon boxes throughout it, which is useful for the boss fight, since I would prefer to not jump on Boom Boom's head. It doesn't actually matter though, because after this, another warp box spawns in with the orange on it. Yep, we're essentially screwed. Can we avoid orange in this one? Well, with the amount of colors this game is known for, I don't know. Both the cap and cascade have absolutely no issues, but I'm sure you know what comes after this. And I consider the results from last time, and we have determined that the sand on the ground is in fact red. So I'm gonna run across it like this, and we're all just gonna learn to live with it. Having the freedom to touch all of this makes collecting 16 moons super easy, and I could pretty much say the same thing about every other kingdom. Honestly, honestly, when associating colors to kingdoms in my head, I usually group orange to just Sand Kingdom and nothing else. So no other kingdom has really any orange in the way. But of course, I knew exactly what this was leading to. Snow Kingdom. If you were wondering which of these kingdoms decided to have orange as its moon color, well, this would be the one, no matter where we are or what moon we want to get. So unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye. Here's the thing for this game. There's no orange required immediately, no orange on the cat shines, and very limited orange on most of the islands around Lake Labcat. So what's the issue? Well, let's think about this. We can very quickly pick up 5 cat shines and then head over to the first Bowser fight. I made sure to not touch his hair for this one, and this was no problem. But afterwards, a new part of the island opens up and Plessy joins in to help us. And he is obviously completely orange. Now, sure, it's possible for us to not ride on Plessy. We could just swim to all the other islands, even if it takes a really long time. However, there is still one spot that Plessy is required at, and that is all the way at the final boss where we ride around to finish off Bowser. See, we all know it's not possible to skip Plessy at that part, so just for the sake of my sanity, how about we agree that I don't have to play through the entire game just to prove that everything else is possible? We know this is impossible, so I'm just gonna move on from this right now. For our final game, I knew it was going to be a tough one, but I was pretty hopeful because for all the colored note blocks on the floor, orange is not within any of them, so we are free to sprint across all of this. And you know what? Despite being back in 2D, there is actually not that much orange around, if any at all. The semi-solid platforms do exist in this game, but they're much more rare, so it is quite easy clearing all of these stages in World 1. But it gets interesting once we have to use these blue seeds for the first required level, the Wiggler race. The problem is that there are these tracks that boost the player ahead, but there's a very obvious orange stripe on them, and this one is way too long, so there is no way to make it all the way over, is what I thought. Then I tried switching to Yoshi for his flutter jump. By using this tech and the parachute badge, we can get a lot of distance, and by jumping right at the edge, fluttering, and tapping the parachute button 3 times, we can just barely make it all the way over. But that's not even it. There's more of these things near the end of the level, and now there's more stacked on top of each other, so we have to get between all of them. It's a pretty tight, but if we do a flutter and pull out the parachute at just the right time, we can squeeze right through. Okay, so I proved you can do both of these, and now I just have to do them both in the same run and fast enough to still beat the Wiggler in the race. That was not an easy thing to accomplish, but after some time, I pulled it off. And now, I wish I could say that we could keep going for a while after that, and we can get to the castle and beat that all the way through, but the problem is that the next area we go to has different colored seeds. This time, it's the orange ones you get while in the obscure parts of the map, not in a certain world. So the fact that we have to beat one of these stages and touch those orange seeds, that is gonna be what marks the end of this challenge. Well, we were off to a hot start there, but then it kind of dropped off a cliff after leaving the NES. But we ended up tying the score with this one, and no duplicates so far. Each cleared game has been unique. Honestly, it kind of makes sense. Orange isn't a color used for the environments or background very much, so it's used for random methods of transportation or a lot of things much more up close. So even with it not being a color that immediately comes to mind for Mario, there were still quite a bit of losses. But now it's time for a color that is very well known around these games, and it just so happens to be my favorite color, yellow. Okay, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we have to not touch. This video is basically going to turn into a coinless and itemless challenge, since the boxes and coins themselves have been yellow from the very start. However, there might be some exceptions to that later on. The first couple of levels have nothing really to mention, and it's very easy to reach the warp zone this time. And now World 4 is where we see something interesting with what I mentioned. Technically, I can still collect coins if they are picked up through the use of blocks like this. These ones are invisible, so not yellow when I hit them, and the coins come out the top, so we're fine. If you ever see my coin count in this video at anything besides 0, that's why. Don't worry guys, I'm not cheating. This allows us to warp to World 8 right away, but then 8-1 is where we hit a bit of a roadblock. There's 2 coins here over a pretty long gap. They're just barely too high to jump over, and there's no way to jump under them because of the length of the gap. I thought I'd have to end it right here, but then I noticed there were 3 Goombas walking into the pit from the other side. I know Super Mario Bros. Doesn't give you a very high bounce from jumping on enemies, but maybe we could do something with this. I tried for a while to bounce across, although the timing was too difficult to get down, but I kept going because I just knew how sick it would be if I made it. And I did. I made the perfect bounce off the last Goomba. After this, there's a few more tight jumps in the level, but nothing as complicated as what we just did. We can soar to the end of the game with relative ease now, but as I made my way through the castle, trying to avoid coins with cool maneuvers and just doing speed strats for fun, I got to Bowser and noticed something horrible. The axe is the same color as everything we've been trying to avoid. After all that, it's gonna fall short quite literally 1 frame before we're done. That's just the start, and I'm already gut-wrenched. Let's hope it's made up for with a new style. Well, I think we should be able to check fairly quickly here, because just like the original, the coins at the start are there, but never placed in a way that make it more difficult. A little unfortunate, though, is how we have to activate some more invisible blocks for some steps in the warp zone. It's technically allowed for this challenge, it just feels morally wrong. Once we go to World 4, there's no warps, so it must be completed in its entirety. And I gotta admit, I was worried on this classic jump because of how the coins were structured, but enough momentum can be preserved to clear the whole line. So the question then becomes, what color is the axe at the end of the castle? And I don't really have an answer. It just kind of flashes between a bunch of colors. So I'm making the decision that if it's not solidly yellow, I'm okay with it. With World 4 complete, World 5 is where the warp zones are. And I struggled with hitting this vine block for way longer than I should have. And once I finally got up, I was greeted with this lovely sight. Hopefully you can see why I gave up here. Well, we have another option, just running along the top of the level to reach the World 7 warp. This does mean we have 4 extra levels to beat, and they are pretty difficult on their own. They took a while, but not for yellow reasons. Honestly, the rest of the game had nothing concerning at all in that regard. There may have been a lot of difficulties along the way, but we can make it all the way to the end and actually jump on the axe this time, giving us our first win. I earned this one. Okay, those first 2 took forever to figure out, but let's continue to the other NES games. Some more issues might come up here because of the underground sections we visit quite frequently. First of all, there's a ladder right here, which is a light and dangerous yellow color. Now there is another path in the stage, so we don't have to touch that necessarily, but there's plenty more to come. And that's pretty obvious because the very next stage, we have to go down this pipe and grab Phanto's key, but all of the platforms down here are yellow. We don't have to land on them right away, but there's no way to get back out without doing so, ultimately halting our progress. I was worried that I might not have the usual power-ups for this game to perform some of the classic warps. But even before that, there was this brief moment of horror, although you apparently jump really high off enemies in this game. Alright, but now to the whistles. Well, we don't actually need a power-up to get the one in level 3, thankfully, but we do for the fortress, and that's where the mushroom house comes in. We can get a leaf if we get lucky enough with the chests, and bring it into the castle to fly up and grab the second whistle. Off To World 8 we go. But there's something I'm worried about. No, it's not the wood on the ships and the tanks. But we're just gonna say all of this is brown. I'm just worried about a certain object at the end of these. Right after you beat Boom Boom, the game calls for the end of the level by touching an orb. Oh, so this game did it before SMW made it cool. However, unlike the green ones a lot of people are used to, this one is actually a shade of yellow. And not good that we're stuck in this room without touching it. Now, as mentioned before, the sand at the beginning of the game is shockingly orange, so we're gonna walk across it now for that reason. But if there's anything similar to this along the way, it's not gonna go as well. Things actually looked pretty good for the first little bit of the game, and then there's the second level. So many trees to jump across, and so many coins scattered about. I thought this first jump would be the end of it, but it turns out by holding the run button, jumping, and pressing right at the perfect moment, you can squeeze through. We're gonna ignore the Koopas and these flying things for now, because I think they're both dark enough to not be yellow. As for the rest of the coins, there's some kind of tricky jumps throughout the level, and a little deja vu right at the end. But it is possible to keep that coin count at 0. And then we get to exactly what I was talking about. The castle stage has these interesting blocks that I guess are a different kind of sand, and yeah, I'm not gonna look past this one. That's yellow. I gotta admit, when you start doing all of these weird challenges for so many classic games, you start to notice things that never caught your eye in the past. Kind of like how in Yoshi's Island 3, there's the snake blocks used to cross this gap. Never even considered that this would be here to ruin my day. Yeah, there is no way we're making this jump around everything yellow. I actually had the idea of going back a level and grabbing Yoshi to assist in the jump, but I forgot I can't do that because he's in a yellow block. So you're telling me we're already at the point where we're failing just minutes into the run? And guess what? It gets even worse from here. There's a lot of yellow blocks floating above the ground at first, so no issue to just run under everything. Although that's not all there is, because just after the midpoint, there's these yellow blocks making a bridge over this area. And it just so happens that 6 blocks long is just enough that even with a running start, Mario can't make it all the way over without his foot getting caught. Even after that, there's all this stuff in the way. Come on, man. But if you thought that was bad, Mario 64 has it worst of all, because we get to watch the cutscene of flying around the castle, and then Mario jumps out of the pipe right onto the sand, the nice yellow sand. So I can't even take a single step before this game is deemed a failure. You can do a lot of crazy things in this game, but getting around this ain't one of them. There's another slight issue with 3D Mario games that we'll probably run into here. So we can get over to Flood just fine, and technically the pack does have yellow on it, but that becomes a part of the player, so we're not counting that. Although it'll only last a few more seconds, because once we spray down the goop plant, the first shine appears. And what a perfect color it is, I must say. Yeah, we kind of can't skip over touching these to beat the game. That seems pretty obvious. You know, I've never actually done coinless challenges for these games, but this does feel like kind of a throwback to some videos I saw many years ago. Some of the jumps in the first level are pretty tight and require some very precise timing to get under, but none of the coins in this space are required to collect, and the same can be said for the second level. In fact, we can still get up to the top of the stage and run over to take the secret exit. Pretty useful to skip that third level and go right to the castle, although there are many more coins in here here as we try to climb to the top. A few jumps can be made which are pretty sick, but it's not long before this point is reached. We gotta get over these coins and under these ones. But with the platform moving under you and the hitbox of these things, there's no way. Even jumping all the way on the far right, you still collect this one. However, I know what some of you are thinking. You already got the secret exit, just go into that mushroom house and grab the mini mushroom. Oh, you wish it was that easy. Turns out the floor in this room is actually completely yellow. So the solution to our problem presents us with another problem, and that means this is going nowhere. I really shouldn't be getting my hopes up for the next 3D game because it's definitely got an expiration date. At least it doesn't start us on anything yellow, and it allows us to just run along the path around all the grass and the flowers. Even when the chaos starts, it's basically a free run all the way to the castle, and then we reach the space portion of the game. I was worried it would immediately spawn me on yellow flowers, but actually the ones in the middle are white, so we can chase the bunny for a bit. And then after they talk to you for a second time, it leaves you right here on the edge of these flowers. That is definitely not what we need. Kind of unfortunate because there were some jumps in the upcoming planets that would have been pretty cool, but at the same time, it's not like we could have gotten the keys, or turned off the switches, or even grabbed the Grand Star. Back to coinless challenge with this game. No telling what kind of predicaments we'll end up in. Despite a few tricky jumps throughout level 1, it was mostly unremarkable. Then in level 2, we go into the underground pipe, and there's 2 coins right below us. For a second, I thought that could be it, but actually if you spin at the first moment you can, it is possible to get around them, so we can continue. Quick side note, yes, you are going to see the coin count and the score increasing quite a bit, and that's just due to me restarting the level and trying again, and sometimes even switching to different files because I kept getting a game over. Everything I'm talking about is possible, I just can't undo any of this when I make a mistake. Just wanted to mention that before someone calls me out. In level 3, a very unfortunate thing is we can't get up here without Yoshi or a power-up, so there's no way to get the cannon exit. Also, if you think going into this mushroom house is gonna fix that, still no. Because we have to climb on the yellow flippy panels. Not to mention, even if we got there, that's a thing. The fortress I 100% thought would end the run, but you know what? I just kept making jump after jump and scaling the entire thing without touching a coin. This jump at the end took some figuring out, but I got it. Then we continue with the rest of the world and make it all the way to the World 1 ending castle. And while it can be cleared and we can defeat Larry, in order to officially beat the world, we have to touch this key falling from above. And as I mentioned, we can't skip over this one, making this an unfortunate way to get stopped. There's really no point at all with me even trying with this one, but I'll do my best and see if there's anything cool I can pull off. And sure, there were a couple points at the start that felt pretty clean, but I knew where it was gonna end. Just gotta take down Pee-wee Piranha, and there's the first star. Awesome, absolutely amazing. Love grabbing these things in this challenge. Hey, I wonder how long this game's gonna last. Oh look, that's it. Yep, just pulling a Mario 64 right here because the first thing our feet touch is yellow sand. Who could have seen that coming? You think we'll be able to avoid coins now, considering they're engraved into the theme? Well, funny enough, I've heard that this game is ironically the easiest out of all 4 new soups to beat coinless. However, we have even more problems with all of the yellow being banned, like this jump. We can't go under the coins in this case, but maybe there's a way to go over and just barely squeeze into the brick block and jump off it just after, all while avoiding the star coin. This was really close, but I'm gonna count it. But as we continue through the game, the same issue comes back in the next stage. And now there's even more coins, falling yellow platforms, and a yellow pipe. There is no way this jump is happening. See, if I could avoid just one of them, I'd be fine. Here, I made it over the coins, but used the platform. And here, I avoided the platforms, but went through the coins. So having to avoid everything is just no. One very important detail about this game is how we don't need blocks to get the acorn suit. We could just kill one of the flying squirrels. Having this suit should be very useful in our quest to avoid all of the coins. Well, that's what it would seem like, but it turns out even that's not good enough to get past a line of coins under a low ceiling. So we have to go to the normal exit and see if anything in the long path will get us. But what I thought would be another quick game actually turned into a very long experience. For one thing, a lot of jumps can be made to avoid coins, and some of them require some thinking. Honestly, no level is easy, but most of them are possible. Also, we don't have to grab a key once we beat a Koopaling on their ship, so didn't get stopped there. Once I reached the desert, it was to the point where I didn't know how I was going this far. It turns out we actually can make it to this level, which also has a secret exit within it, and following that path eventually leads us to where we would usually be, World 5. Okay, so what's up with this? There's many more tight jumps, which an acorn is very useful for, but if you lose it, it's not the easiest thing ever to obtain one again because we still can't hit blocks. Fast forwarding a bit through things, the fortress here looked a little problematic, so instead I went back a level and got this secret exit. That allowed for this bridge to spawn in and go to the end of World 5. This means we can't take the secret exit to skip right to World 7, but it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. After a couple more levels of narrowly surviving while also avoiding every coin, we reached a World 6. And yeah, I was not having it with this stage because of all these weird setups. So I just said screw it, and I went back and caught Nabbit to get the P-Wing. So I just completely skipped the whole stage because you do what you gotta do sometimes. But in this case now, I can't do anything after that because the pipe leading to the main stage is yellow. Really? 2 hours of work just for it to come to a point like this? I don't want to think about the last game. What's next? Unfortunately, now we're back in the no power-ups club because not only are the blocks yellow, but the Katsu itself is yellow. That's no problem for the first level, but in the second, I would usually climb up here to enter the pipe for a warp. Honestly, I figured any solution in this case would go, so I tossed a controller to my roommate Elijah and just said, stand against the back wall and keep jumping. It took longer than we expected because there were quite a lot of controller malfunctions and just general difficulty, but eventually I got up there, and we were off. But in doing this, I seemingly trapped myself by going to the desert world, and the sand, unfortunately, cannot be skipped over for this game. At least being in Cap Kingdom, we are away from all the bright colors, so there is no yellow to watch out for, except for on the doors, I guess. But we can throw Cappy in just the right spot to only hit the red part. Also in the tower, I decided to skip the frog just to make it a bit easier to avoid all the coins. Now it's not so hard to do that in a 3D space. Afterwards, we can open another door, take down Topper at the peak of the tower, and get completely stuck because of the yellow spark pylon we have to capture. Wow, I thought I would at least see the first moon before this one ended. Sadly, I'm remembering quite a lot of yellow with this game, but at the very least, it doesn't start us on the grass right away. It actually drops us onto one of Bowser's giant footprints. That's not ominous. The grass here might look green, but if you've seen it in light, you'd know otherwise. So I'm gonna try to go around it by jumping across all of the rocks. Amusingly, we can reach the other side and get onto the pirate ship, and even use all of these falling pillars to jump across and get to the first cat shine on the blocks. But even if we say I can grab this one by only touching the red side of it, it just spawns us back on the grass with that amazingly colored surface.
To finish it off, we have another 2D experience where we have to avoid coins. I will say, though, it's not as bad as some of the previous ones we've looked at. If anything, the challenge comes from other yellow things, like the note blocks on the floor, or in the case of this stage, the cheese. Getting through this seemed near impossible, but thank goodness the enemies can break down these blocks by hitting them. Except there was a point where I kind of boxed myself in around all yellow stuff, but that's why we have Yoshi to help out. Using his flutters makes getting past all these jumps much easier. And once we beat this stage, it is smooth sailing for a while. Getting a bunch of blue seeds to open the Wiggler race is fine, and winning that thing is significantly easier than last time. But then we get to the next required level, which is the Bowser Jr. Castle.
Ew.
The floor in itself is green, but there's also yellow coins everywhere with yellow platforms. Combining them together makes a setup like this, which we have no chance of passing. Like, seriously, what am I supposed to do here? Made a good run for the last game, but that is where this color is finished.
Is anyone surprised by this result? Mario is known for collecting coins in every game he's a part of, so there is yellow all over the place. In these types of games, you have to have some kind of item bright and shiny in the foreground to show its importance. But people have shown that it is possible to clear several Mario games without touching coins. It's just when you add in avoiding everything else that's yellow, you get a lot of tough spots. It was kind of torturous getting so far in some of these games, but failing just before the end of it. And technically, I kind of cheated for the one win that I did get since I used the All-Stars version for the lost levels. Had I not done that, the axe also would have been yellow. I wasn't expecting this color to do well, but I was still hoping it could do better, especially considering the next one we have might be even worse. What is in store for green?
Okay, it may start us right in front of this green hill, but no, see, it's in the background, doesn't count. And even better, the ground is completely valid because it's all just brown bricks. The first obstacle, of course, would be this green pipe. Well, actually, multiple pipes with increasing elevation. Okay, I'm sorry, I already feel like I'm dragging this out for longer than I should. Anyway, with enough speed, we can get over all the pipes, and the rest of the level has no issues, until we get to the very end of it, because this is the NES, so sometimes colors don't make a lot of sense. And in this case, the flagpole is green. The top bulb and the pole itself, no matter where we jump on it, we're screwed. And it makes Mario walk into a pipe on the next screen anyway. Alright, new color scheme, and oh my gosh, you're kidding me. And now it's not just bricks, there's actually grass over it. At least that green Koopa had the decency to jump over me. But yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere with this one. Quite sad too, because the pole actually would have been legal here. I guess we don't spawn right on green in this case, but it's still just right there. Okay, technically I can get a little further and move to the side, but I can't exactly go in that door without landing somewhere on the green stuff. In fact, going through the door really shows you how much there is in this game. Seriously, if I was counting how many times it was required for you to touch green to beat a game, I think this would have the record. Oh, okay, we can do something here. That's a start. I guess they didn't want real grass in the first scene of the stage play, so that's cool. And now we just gotta jump over some pipes and some green semi-solid blocks as well. Easy enough to make our way through this one, but let me show you level 2. You know, it'd be funny if it didn't feel so insulting. Besides the enemies, literally everything here is green. Is this the St. Patrick's Day level? Did I miss the memo? It's almost like they put this in the game just to upset me. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with that, even though this game is literally twice my age. Alright, so we start on sand with this one, and just have to avoid some green pipes in the way. Thankfully, you can run pretty fast in this game, so you can also make some pretty far jumps. Nothing crazy going on at all here. And then they hit you with this. Instead of grass, now there's trees, but still green leaves to jump across. I do not believe there is any way I can solve this. And here's another game where it looks to be luscious green everywhere. Either level we enter, there is a nice line of green grass right on top of the ground. Going absolutely nowhere with this one. Hey, you know what could be fun? Running on the green grass, jumping on the green Yoshi, then going back to the first level to try to do a glitch and get the green orb. Except the game totally crashed out when I tried that. Very fitting for this whole video. Yeah, can you guess what happens here? More grass right away. At least one of the Game Boy games had to do it. We probably could have been able to do at least some of these zones, but the game didn't even let us get there. Let's see how we do in 3D. You could say Mario would touch this green pipe before we start, but there is no evidence that's true. And we're not in control yet, so it's all good. It also doesn't drop us on the grass, so we can just go around all of it. And for once, none of these colors by the door is gonna stop us. Wow, we're actually gonna enter a painting and lose instantly because look at where it drops us. It couldn't have been on the rock or on that path a bit further up. No, just right there. Perfect. As we learned in a recent ranking video, this game seemingly has the most grass out of all of them. But I don't know, I still had high hopes for this, because I knew I could make at least some progress. No green on the airstrip. There is some in Delfino Plaza, but it's easy to avoid as we try to get the first level started up, and we actually can go into Bianca Hills. Wait, Bianca? No, it's Bianco. There is still a lot of grass everywhere on the ground and on the hills above. Thankfully, we have the hover nozzle to go over most of it and get to the area we need to get to. Now, Elijah tried to tell me that Petey Piranha is where it would end because of his green body. But actually, we can ground pound him right at the edge of his full stomach and get the hit while only touching his red, shorts? Underwear? Whatever. So that felt good, but then right after comes the first secret mission. That's a problem, because there's no way to enter the cave without falling and making contact with the grass. And even worse, we start on a fully green platform inside. Hey, that was still pretty far for this color, so I can't be too upset. Although I will be upset about this one, because as we head to this new 2D game, it takes the more modern look of the overworld and adds grass in, which we start right on top of. This might be a lighter green than what we've seen before, but it's still not gonna work. Let's do another where we can actually try. But once again, we can walk around all of the grass and stay on the non-green path, even up near the castle, which I've never actually gone this way at this stage of the game, and the camera doesn't even follow you. Once in space, it starts us on this great planet that's actually just filled with grass. I thought I'd make an exception since we're on the flowers, and I did want to catch the bunnies, but I found one and led it towards the grass where I could not avoid it myself. To make matters worse, one of them is hiding in the green pipe and another in the grass itself. Amazing spot. Man, you know, I really thought we were gonna make progress with this one. I could never have guessed that there would be more grass right when we started. This whole 2D stuff is really not working for me here. And this isn't even a 2D game, but the intro still plays like one. And for some reason, the grass is included in that. I actually made at least a little bit of progress in the first Galaxy game, but now this one has got to sit at the bottom with all these other pathetic results, just because of this small setup. If only we had made it to space. Here we go, I can actually play this one. It starts me in the yellow dirt, so I should be able to run and jump through here. There's actually enough of a path so that I can jump onto this block and grab a tanuki leaf. That's gonna be very helpful. A good thing the path keeps going so I can continue through here, and I can float when a far jump is needed. Even this part near the end, it doesn't look doable at first, but it is by wall jumping here and landing on the box. So we actually can beat a level in this game. Also, the second stage is underground, so there's no green to watch out for at all, except at the very end with this green pipe. At least we do have the option to take the secret warpath and go in the orange pipe, but that's also not gonna work since, yep, this level actually keeps tradition and starts us directly on the grass. Hey, compared to everything else, this is still a win. This one's most certainly not going to be a win though, because guess what? It's back to starting right on grass in a 2D game. It is kind of sad, because some of these games would be cool to try if the grass didn't exist, but it does, and there is nothing we can do about it. Yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say. Thank you, New Super Mario Bros. Series. Now look, I know in this game you're in control on the world map and it starts you on green right away, but we're not counting it. I'm not in a level. For the actual stage, we start right on grass again, except it's a different color in the circle. Most of the grass is green, but I think this little bit is more of a teal color. So we're just gonna decide to let me play this one out, and now I can start to make my way through and grab a cat suit to help out. Also important to know, I can't get green stars, which would mean I can't unlock certain things to beat it later, but I can't imagine I'll get that far anyway, right? For the rest of this level, we can use some cool maneuvers and avoid a lot of the grass. I do have to touch a sliver of it at the end, but it's more of that teal stuff. Then level 2 is played, and unlike 3D Land where it starts you underground right away, this one starts you outside, this time on the clearly green grass, with a green Koopa and needing to go down a green pipe. Nice, love to see that. Okay, we have another 3D game. This would tell us we can play for a bit. And yeah, this might be grass in Cap Kingdom, but you are not about to tell me that that's green. It really does benefit us with the darker colors here. And now there are frogs in the tower, but thank goodness I have a bit of experience making this jump. Basically doing the minimum captures route at this point. We can get all the way to the top and into the topper fight, who is green, but we should be able to avoid it. We can kind of just jump on the front of his face to get hit instead of directly on top. Now we just avoid the green hats on the floor and we're out of here. To Cascade Kingdom. Oh, wait. Well, I think we all know where this cutscene is leading us. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Boom. The face plant right in that grass. There does not appear to be anything we can do for this. So might as well just take a nap before the next game. Okay, out of every game, this is the one I had the highest hopes for going in. It actually doesn't start us in the grass right away in this case. But either way, this grass technically isn't green. It just looks darker in, well, the dark. Just for fun though, I'll walk along all the rocks on the outside and get to the ship. And now we can grab the first cat shine, opening up the next area and bringing back the sun. Now we see the grass is actually yellow. Holy crap, if this is the way all the grass looks, we should be able to make a lot of progress here. And the game is much more open world, so if any shine seems too difficult, we can just skip it. Sparing all of the details, really the only difficult parts were over here in the Colosseum with climbing the wall, until I realized I could just jump over to the non-green part of the wall. I got this shine in the invisible tube, but the only way to get out was this green pipe. That's fine, I'll just close out the game and go back in instead. And then there was this green rug on the ship, but thankfully there's enough space to go around with Plessy. And honestly, that's pretty much it. With there being so many different colors in the game and grass actually being safe this time, we can get through all the Bowser battles, and I guess his shell is green in the final showdown, but we don't even touch him during this. That means we can beat a Mario game without touching green. I was so sure I was going to be taking a 0 in this video, so that feels really good. And I wish I could have a more epic send-off with Wonder, but nope, this is right back to what we all know and love, grass instantly. Maybe it's more symbolic to have this be the last game. There really is just so much green everywhere.
Don't get it twisted, the score might have been low, but the fact that we got even one win out of this is an accomplishment. Someone must have told Mario to touch grass, because he really took that to heart since grass is everywhere around these places. And even in the spots where grass wouldn't catch us immediately, shortly after, something else like a pipe would get in the way. Bowser's Fury just somehow created the perfect storm where the grass is actually yellow and it's all one area, so there's no green pipes to travel through. Very appreciative for this situation since it protected us from a score of 0. These last two colors were a bit rough overall, but let's see if things can be picked up again with more of a cooler color, blue.
So starting off with our first game, we have minimal issues here at the beginning. I'll say it again, the blue sky in the background is not something we can touch, so as long as we don't take the underground pipe, we should be all good. Well, for about one more minute at least, because as soon as we beat this stage, it's a full-on underground level that's required. And with everything being much darker, blue is the popular color of this place. Well, that was a complete failure, but I would hope that you do not fail at clicking that subscribe button, because that would just be very sad now, wouldn't it? What else is there? I probably don't have to say that we run into the same issue with the lost levels. The first stage is an absolute breeze with nothing blue to look out for, and then we go into the pipe to see what truly lies beneath. It doesn't matter the version or the console, it's always blue in these parts. Too bad there's no warp this early on. And now to the true sequel, where I hope we can make some progress. Well, I gotta say, there's a lot of blue here, like the sky normally, and in the Dark World, as well as all of the waterfalls, but all of those are things in the background, so I'm not gonna worry about it at all. Also, the caves in this game are not completely filled with blue, so it's no problem getting to the Birdo fight. But then I noticed the arena. There appears to be blue blocks here, which I would normally count, since I don't think the outline should be taken into consideration. But in this case, I think it's different, simply because of the design with the cross. So we'll say we only touch the white part. Making this exception allows us to clear the first level and also get through the second with a relative ease. But in the third, we have a dilemma, because there is a warp we could take. I thought doing that might help us out, so I went straight to World 4, only to land right here. These ice blocks are basically on the cusp between blue and purple, but they are the same color as the water down below, so I'm gonna have to call them blue. That means we can't go this way, but the main part in World 1 isn't that much better because the alternative is we go in this door. Yeah, I'm not liking the look of this room. And now the outline of these blocks doesn't matter because the whole thing is blue. Here in the third game, kinda, there are blue blocks bolted to the walls, but as long as we don't jump on top of them, they'll be in the background. Besides that, in level 1, there's nothing to be concerned about, and the same goes for level 2, because as we've learned, this entire thing is green. I thought I'd be saying the same thing about the third level I played, because it was looking good, and looking like I'd get a warp whistle, but I stepped into that room and realized this is what it looks like. So I can't get that one, but what about in the fortress? Well, if I fly up and go into this room, same problem. Even if I technically get the whistle, I still have to touch the ground, so I can't get any whistles at all here. And the final kick to the shins is that the next regular room in the castle has those same blue blocks, which puts an end to halting our progression from all directions. Okay, so color works weird in this game. Let's just make that clear. Obviously, this game was not meant to look like this originally, so for some of the blocks like these, they just have the blue stripes on them instead of the whole thing being one color. But for the purposes of this, I'm just gonna say that the whole thing is blue because that makes more sense. Not a problem for the first few groups of them because we can jump right over. However, near the end, it is a problem. All of those same blocks make the classic staircase to finish off the first level of the game, and you're crazy if you think we have a high enough jump to get over all that. I can think of a few blue enemies in this game, but nothing that seems unpassable. The first couple of levels in this are absolutely no challenge at all, but it's at this point that I think we need to answer an important question. Is water wet? I mean, is water blue? Well, I'm gonna avoid answering that at this moment because we can go right over it in this level. And then, even though Iggy might have a blue shell, I can defeat him with fireballs. No touching there. So that's cool, but heading into level 2 is where we get a cape and an important secret exit. But this happens to lead to a water level. Okay, here's what we determined. So water is technically not blue, it's clear. But in large bodies of it, it looks blue because of some science thing. You can look it up. Anyway, that's the real world. But what we're playing is not the real world. And actual colors are put in place like blue for the water. So I'm gonna say it counts, meaning we can't beat this level. That's a problem because we can't continue the chain of secret exits. At least we can keep going and try to find another way into the Star World. I tried to get the one in World 3, only to find it was another water level, completely required to jump into, so neither of these exits are possible. That means the only path is this way through Vanilla Dome, but once we're outside, there's even more water levels. One of them is a dolphin stage that would be a problem, but we can just go right over the whole thing with a cape. Unfortunately, I can't do that with the next castle because the whole thing is submerged. Even without all of that, there's a blue pipe at the end of this section just to put the nail in the coffin. This game really did not want me moving forward. A very similar problem is in this game now, because we don't really have the option to skip any levels. Most of this is actually pretty free of blue, but there's one zone that's concerning. That would be the turtle zone, since we have to do a lot of swimming in it. It's not the only place that has water, but there is definitely the most here, and no way to get around all of it. Just like before, in the game, the color blue was obviously used to make this water. Old classics done, it's 3D time. And that is some pretty blue water I see around the castle. It's not required to swim and all that, but there is an early water level with Jolly Roger Bay that I'm concerned about. There's no way we can get anything from that level, and I don't feel so good about Cool Cool Mountain either, since that's technically also water, just frozen. I don't want to be touching all that blue ice. Thankfully, I found just enough stars in other places. There were 3 I could get in Babam Battlefield. I got 2 from Princess Peach's Slide, and then I also got 3 from Whomp's Fortress, even if there's a bit of water there. With those 8 stars, we can enter the first Bowser level, but that's where it goes downhill, simply because the very first platform in here is blue. Also, I just noticed this thing kind of looks like a Lego piece. Another issue we can look at, just because, are these swinging platforms. They are all blue, and I'm not sure if you can jump over the entire thing. But even worse is the fact that Bowser's arena itself is blue. So this color is just put entirely over places where there's no sunlight. You know how water has been a problem today? So yeah, I don't have high hopes for this one. But hold on just a second, because the water here is a bit different. Not all of it needs to change color to look blue in the game. The water that shoots out of Flood is still clear, no matter how you slice it. We're not even really touching that as we're shooting it, but even still, I don't think it would count. The first shine on the airstrip is simple. Shadow Mario is blue, but we can still take him down without touching him. Just the water does that. And now it's time to try Bianco Hills, which shouldn't be much of an issue because the color green and I guess white really dominate this area. Also, no need to jump in that pond, and there is no blue at all when fighting Petey Piranha. Although the most concerning part of this is going to be the secret missions because they are full of color, and it's all placed very randomly. In episode 3 here, it's pretty straightforward with no blue in the way, but in episode 6, that changes with blue rotating platforms and a very large blue surface. At least the middle of said rotating things can still be touched, and we can do a very close jump to get onto the swinging star platform, as well as walk right to the edge of a point and dive over to that cube. From then on, beating the rest of this is pretty easy, and we can fully complete at least one of these stages. But then we try Rico Harbor, and it's shockingly the first shine here that gets us. And now, you know the squid boss here? He does have blue tentacles, but there is a trick during the fight where we can just spray him and then pull his mouth without having to tear anything else before. So none of the tentacles need to be pulled off, right? Unfortunately, that's not true because there is still that one tentacle sticking out of the boxes to start the fight. It's the only one that's required in all 3 fights, but we do get a very clear view of how blue the end of that thing is and how much inside of it we are. Very sad. And now that it's back to this style, we have to hope that we don't fall into the same traps here. Well, level 1 still looks good, but the questionable part is number 2. However, things are a bit different here with the rocks. It doesn't solve these bricks it drops us onto, but it's okay, we can fix that by just canceling the ground pound and hugging the wall. Like I was saying with the rocks, it's not as blue and the top is actually gray, so if we just avoid all those blue bricks, we're good. And really the only challenge is all this right here. It's too much to jump over, but we can just kick this Koopa down here, creating a path to go under. But we can also take the secret exit up top, allowing us to go straight to the fortress. Except this kind of just speeds up the disappointment because there's a ton of blue platforms in this dark place. I don't care how you go about it, no way we can do some trick to skip all these. The question is, will there be enough sunlight deep into space wherever we travel? Well, let's see. The first part of the intro and walking to the castle has nothing in our way. And once we get into space, tagging all the bunnies is simple enough, as long as we don't let them go into parts with water. But now it's interesting, because we get our spin attack, and it has us tested out by breaking crystals over here. And I don't know, this might be kind of a transparent blue color. At the very least, teal. Some would say that these should count, and you might be right. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because just after, in the final planet of this mission, to save the Grand Star, we have to step on all the panels, turning them off. When they do turn off, they become a very clear blue right there. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. So I'll make this the official point where we lost again. This one is shockingly not doing so great. Probably don't need to say too much about this, as we've already seen what happens with 2D, but things might be different this time, because I can get a propeller suit in the first level. This will come in handy once we go underground. There are quite a bit of blue rocks, but we can fly right over most of them. We need a little help along the way from random stuff like these bricks, assuming they aren't blue. I wasn't completely sure, but even if we allow it, things still go wrong, because we can actually get through the entire stage like this, avoiding all the rocks, but it would still be required at the end to go in the exit pipe, because unfortunately you can't enter them in the air. A Galaxy sequel? Well, besides the star bits, which I don't count, there is hardly any blue in this. Guess it doesn't really fit with the intro, whether it's sunny and happy or dark and in chaos. So basically, I couldn't lose here, even if I was blindfolded. But it becomes unfortunate with the first star of the game, because we really see how the launch stars work. You know how when flying, star bits can circle you? Well, that happens from this. We just bust right through that blue crystal. It didn't have a chance in the world. Or galaxy, I guess. This happens twice throughout just the first mission. Pretty hard to skip over a required transition between planets. So, you know how we've seen with 2D games, there's like one level that's the main overworld and it's totally fine to clear, but then comes the underground right after? And you also know how even though this game has 3D in the name, the structure is closer to 2D. Well, yeah, that actually continues with this issue we have, because we drop right underground and that floor is exactly what we don't want to touch. Is this game gonna go how we're all thinking, or is there something more interesting? I wish. But if there's something, it's the fact that more blue is here than usual. But all of it is still pretty easy to not directly touch. Then we go to the underworld, and we land on this line of blocks right above this blue that we're inevitably gonna have to touch. A situation where we know it's over, and we just gotta accept it. Which is sad, because if that ceiling wasn't like that, there could have been a lot of cool jumps here, but now that means nothing. I think we should just cut to the chase on this one. I thought grabbing the acorn suit would help with things once we got underground, similar to the Wii version. But unlike the Wii version, the pipe is horizontal and immediately drops us onto the blue ground with no chance to avoid it at all. Once again, sad we can't try any of these jumps, but it is what it is. And here's another where I feel like not much needs to be said. Well, maybe except for the grass at the start. I'm still not counting it because I don't know what color it falls more into. But anyway, we can get a catsuit if we feel like it, fly to the end of the first level, and then still have to go underground. What's with these always being the exact same? There is no chance of avoiding all this blue sand. I was expecting to at least be able to do something with this one. Usually, depending on the color, we can get to the kingdom where that color moon is. So I thought we should be able to make it all the way to Wooded, right? Well, I got hit with a wave of disappointment because this lever is used to raise the bridge in Cap Kingdom. You know, for years, scientists have wondered if you can make this jump without the bridge, and the answer is still a clear no. So unfortunately, Cappy does have to be thrown and pull this blue thing to bring it up. The way it works is we gotta count whatever he touches too, so that's a bummer. Okay, Bowser's Fury is always the game that saves us when we're stuck in a rut, except we do fall onto this patch of dirt before we start, which is kind of like the underground sand we've seen a million times throughout this video. But what I like to do is grab the first shine and switch it back to daytime to truly see. And going back over, yeah, this is nowhere near blue. Although a problem I'm noticing is all the water around Lake Lapcat. But we'll do our best to avoid it as long as possible. Although I noticed getting to both Pounce Bounce Isle and Fort Flaptrap is pretty tough with that in mind. Thankfully, the Tanuki Leaf comes in clutch and we can clear both these gaps with a lot of speed, giving us the opportunity to get 5 easy cat shines. So it's time for the first Bowser fight through the Giga Bell. But what does Mario do once he collects it? Drops down right into the water, because that's just how the fight goes. Yeah, there was no way we were avoiding all of that for our entire time out here. Not even the most open world game can give us a win out of this color. Just one shot left with Mario Wonder. But you know what? Things are already not looking too great, since in the first world, the Wonder Flowers are blue, and the same goes for the seeds. And I'll be straight up with this, even if you want to say the ones collected from the goal shouldn't count, you're still gonna have to touch a flower or a seed yourself to get enough to move on. And not only that, but there's a giant blue royal seed at the end of the castle. It definitely can't defeat Bowser without these things, so the blue is needed, putting an end to this challenge.
If you asked me to bet which color would lead to 0 clears, blue probably would not have been the first one on my mind. This color is all in the sky, something you can't touch, but I guess when the sky goes away and it becomes darker, the blue comes into the foreground to stop us. Maybe if water wasn't included, we could have avoided the score, but I felt like I had to include it because of game logic. Still though, to get a score worse than yellow and green is just abysmal. We started off not the greatest with this whole thing, but the score still just keeps getting lower. But I have a good feeling that pattern will be broken with this next game. We need to find a winner, and a strong contender for the crown might just be purple.
Alright, first game in the series, and what do we have to avoid? Honestly, we don't really need to watch for anything at all. Above ground, underground, each theme has nothing specifically purple. It's clear that they couldn't add in a lot of color for this game, so purple kind of had to be shafted from almost every object. It's very easy to take the warps to go straight to World 8 as fast as possible, and once again, in all of these overworld levels, there's nothing to worry about. However, there is one thing in the final castle that could change our fate. Some of you might not even remember this exists, but there's a pipe leading us to the water room, and it's this very weird color that we definitely have to question. Ignoring the border of this thing, the color finder does say that it's kind of a red-purple color, kind of in between those, and on this console, that's pretty much as close as we're gonna get, so this is unfortunately a fail. Since we play on the All-Stars version for the lost levels to mix things up a bit, I don't know if the colors will change. Overworld still looks mostly purple-free outside of the new poison mushrooms, but I don't know if you know this, I wasn't planning on grabbing those anyway. We can easily take all of the useful warps to get to the last world, and clear all of the challenges in the sky while avoiding all of that poison that might jump out. And now we're at the final castle, and good news, this pipe is actually normal and not a random purple color, so we can actually complete the water section leading us to the rest of the castle and eventually being able to dodge both Bruce and Bowser to beat this game. It feels good to get our first win, and if you want to get a win as well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button while you're at it, because those will actually give you good luck for the next 4 years. Try it, why not? And now let's keep going. Let's go back to the NES now, because we gotta see if there's any purple in this sequel. But that's not really gonna happen, because all of the Shy Guys are either red or pink, and none of the Dark Cave sections feature anything close to purple. In fact, I started thinking about the challenges I did last year of trying to touch every color as fast as possible, and I literally could not do it with this game on this version, because the only thing purple is when we warp to World 4, the sky in the background during these ice levels. I can't touch that, however, so there are absolutely no obstacles as we continue on. This means we can take another quick warp right to World 6 and then speed through the rest of the levels without a care in the world. Not much of a challenge to make it all the way to the end, I guess, but there you go. The final NES game brings with it basically everything we've already talked about. And now I should mention there is more purple in the game altogether, but not if we're just trying to reach the end, because we can grab both the warp whistles in World 1 with no danger and head on to World 8 straight away. Then the game just finishes with a whole bunch of dark airship levels and castles. Having a color like purple at all definitely wouldn't make sense in any of this stuff, so we run all the way to the final castle and take down Bowser with hardly any chance of failing. I wish it was more exciting, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Okay, here we go. I can actually talk about this game. Although, we all know what the deal is with color in this one, so if there's not really supposed to be any, where does the purple fall in? And to that I answer, just a bunch of random enemies scattered around. These bug-like things on the first level are what first comes to mind, but they're all easy to get around. These small purple guys aren't going to be a huge thing that stops our progress, and most of the game is black and white anyway still. This is a definite win. Okay, here's where the color starts to pick up, so it should be more challenging. Well, we start making our way through the first world, no problem. Also, I've been told by a lot of people they think the message block is purple. I would strongly disagree, but just for you, I'll still avoid it. Then the last 2 levels in here have nothing, but it gets more interesting once we grab a cape feather. This is because we can now start taking secret exits to reach the end quickly, like in Donut Plains 1, in the secret water stage. The ghost house also has no issue, assuming you don't think these throw blocks are purple. I know someone is gonna say they're purple, but to me they've always been blue or kind of indigo, still outside of that purple category. Taking all these exits is important because now we can get to the star world, but the issue is we can beat one of them with a secret exit, and then we come out of the pipe in level 2 to see a purple pipe on the left. So this incredibly straightforward water stage is a no-go. And going back through this star road doesn't help since we can't actually exit here. Shoot, guess that means we're going along the normal path. But you know what? There's no pipes to worry about here, and most of the levels are a non-factor if we can just keep the cape to fly over them. Best of all, in a short time we can find a different secret path on the bridge. This time, the water stage has a safe color pipe. And that means going along here, we can enter the star road from the 3rd spot to reach the end. You know what that means? That whole path we took back with the Big Boo battle, we didn't need to do that. So if you said those blocks were purple, it didn't matter, and now you gotta write an apology down in the comments. Oh, wait, there's the same blocks here. Ah, whatever, I stand by what I said back then. And now let's finish the star world with the last 2 secret exits, get brought right to the castle, and very easily be able to waltz through with no purple around. The last room is even fully dark, so there's not much color around at all. Never been able to make it all the way to this fight in one of these challenges before, but it feels good to finally take down Bowser with all those Mecha Koopas to get another victory. As you can imagine, the first level in here features your standard overworld colors, which purple is not a part of, obviously. But moving on to the other zones, there is one theme where it fits perfectly. Machinery, which unfortunately is what's in the Mario zone. You could say all of the purple in this room really grinds my gears, you know? I'll see myself out. Going to 3 dimensions now, and I'm interested to see how this goes. We all know there's really nothing purple outside, and a little bit in the castle, but nothing we can't walk around. Then, as long as we get a few stars to get ourselves underway, everything should be all good. And let me tell you, I didn't see anything purple in either Bob-omb Battlefield or Whomp's Fortress, so I got almost all of the stars there, no problem. Also, this doesn't really relate to anything, but I really just wanted wanted to show this insane moment on the Cool Mountain slide where I fell down and thought for sure I was dead, but I actually was able to grab the ledge just barely. And after grabbing a few more around the castle, the important part are the Bowser levels. And yeah, there's no purple all the way through here or in the fight. I could talk about most of the other levels too, but there's really nothing to mention as there's no purple themes. I thought Hazy Maze Cave would be an issue, but it wasn't. So really the only thing to mention is if there's purple in the other Bowser levels. Nope, they were as clean as can be, which leaves this classic game as another easy win. With Sunshine being filled with a lot of, well, sun and bright areas, where does purple fall in? That is a great question, and once again, for most of it, it doesn't. Yellow, green, and blue are definitely the most visible colors when at the beach, so the early stages have no obstacles at all. Only advice I can give, don't pick the purple blooper to surf on. Even Pinna Park has a little purple, but not as much as you'd think. Let's remember something though. When you're on vacation and you go back to the hotel, what's a fun place to visit? The casino. No, the purple we touch is not this Pianta, but there is a lot of color inside this room. And the second time we go in, we have to ground pound the roulette table to go to the King Boo fight down below. The only way for it to move would be to hit the one purple spot on the table. Yep, that little speck of color right there. Even if we do that, it starts us on that same spot once we're in the fight, so it seems like there's no way past this one. Now we're to the games that might be a little more complicated. I say that because of the possible paths that are available here, but I don't know if we'll even have to worry about that too much, because first few levels, we all know the themes, no purple around, but the castle changes things up a bit, because now there's a dangerous color on those walls. At least it's not the floor we spawn on, so we can try to climb a little bit. There's also two paths forward, main and secret, although if we try to take the shortcut, we get stuck under the block since there's purple that extends to the floor here. And going all the way to the top in the main section isn't much better because this is Bowser Jr.'s arena. Now he actually knows what to put in so he gets stopped. Space-time, and also back to 3D, which should mean we have more freedom. However, that's assuming that we can get all the way through the tutorial and the first star of the game. And unfortunately, once we reach the first planet, we gotta chase the bunnies, which lead us over to the flowers. And it is right on the edge, but it looks like we get teleported to standing right on these purple petals. So we go back to this series, and there's something that we should probably do right away. That's grabbing a propeller suit, just to help out in some future levels. It immediately becomes apparent in the cave level, because we go in, and would drop right onto a purple crystal, but not this time. And now we can just use this thing to fly over every one of these obstacles down here. Thankfully, there's enough space to make it over all of them. And from there, what challenge is left? Well, there's just one thing. We can start taking the secret exits to move worlds, and it goes pretty well into World 5, except for the Iggy Fortress. Because once we get all the way to the top and enter the fight, it starts us like this, where we stand on a purple semi-solid. However, that's not where we actually start, because before gaining control, the yellow platform lifts us up. Then we can avoid the purple after that, so that means we never touch the purple while controlling Mario. Kind of a technicality there, but we're gonna let this one slide. Now we just have to not fall into some poison, and that's it. Yeah, this is also pretty easy. We just cannon right onto World 8 after this, and run to the end with purple not really being a factor at all. Don't know exactly what it is about all these castles, but Bowser is clearly not a fan of this color.
Well, hopefully this Galaxy game doesn't put me in a bunch of purple flowers. Thankfully, it didn't. The intro went well, and we got into space and grabbed the first star with no trouble. I'd imagine that's going to be a common theme, but this game is on the more linear side, and that's a problem with a lot of galaxies where we have to clear something. Like this, for example. World 1 was a breeze, but starting World 2 is Puzzle Plant Galaxy. And now, I couldn't get the main star because it finishes with these purple bugs as bosses. So instead, I got the secret star and defeated this boss, so we can still move on. But the purple does catch up to us anyway because there's a definite required star in the first Bowser Galaxy. You might think I'm gonna talk about this part with the purple lift over the lava, but actually no, because there's a lot of life-up mushrooms around, and with all of that health, we can lava bounce over it all. But what I am gonna talk about is this part. No, not the purple door, the vortex that pulls us afterwards. I know some are gonna say this shouldn't count, and I'm still on the fence if it should, but that's a lot of light and lasers around us as we get pulled. It's a unique situation, and a lot of these games have been going on too long anyway, so I'm just gonna count it. Don't hate me. I have no idea how this is gonna go either, because there could just be some random thing that stops us. Level 1 features no purple as per usual, and level 2 has some purple rails around them, but those are hardly getting in the way. So we easily take the secret exit to go into World 2, and the levels in here aren't too bad. Some poison in this stage, but again, I didn't really want to touch that in the first place. Now, I guess I could count this purple box, but as I've said, in these games, I only look at stuff in the levels and not on the map, so we can jump ahead a little bit, but of course, it only takes one little thing, and in this case, that thing is the floor of the airstrip boss room. We're not getting out without defeating this guy, and it just had to drop us on the outside circle of the room. For as much credit as I give this game for being very colorful, it's really just the first level with all these blocks in place. After we get past all those things, there's basically no trouble through the whole game. Like, I wish I could talk about it more in depth, but taking the quickest path to the end means we have no danger and can easily beat this as well. Same thing for the last one in this series. Again, so many secret paths to explore as we make our way to the end, and this time there's no weird situation in a castle. There really is just no purple the whole way through, and I can't explain it. Really, the biggest thing is the purple cloud formed around the castle, which we do run inside, but that's an overworld thing anyway. As for the main levels, I got nothing. I knew we'd clear more games with this color, but I didn't think it would be this easy. As I started up this game, I figured that we could make some progress here, but with the random level themes, it makes me think we'll run into an obstacle of some kind. We can warp over to World 2 right away, and just like I thought, a lot of different colors around the levels, but nothing purple. Even the boss arena at the end of the castle was fine. It actually doesn't come up until World 3. There's a ghost house near the beginning of here, and as you know, the doors in those things are purple. But I could make an exception because it doesn't look like we touch that part of the door as we go through. What I can't make an exception for is the Peach level just after. Because, you know, even though Peach is pink, they had to make the grass here contrast a little so it became purple. Awesome. Okay, let's take a little pop quiz here. What kingdom has purple-colored moons? Go ahead, I'll let you make your guess. Ding, 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 it's Seaside Kingdom. So the question is, can we make it there? Well, let's see. Topper's hair is purple, but we don't have to jump on that part of his head. I realize we can't grab regional coins. The Sand Kingdom town has a lot of color, and the purple actually locks out a couple of moons, but if we just stay away from that area, everything is fine. Wooded has a lot of
poison to avoid, and we have to hit Spewer before he spews it at us. And then there's Mecha Wiggler, who does have some purple bulbs that we shoot, but that's a projectile, so similar to the Fire Flower, it's allowed. All that means we can reach the beach world, and very happily take the colored moon of this place. I know I'm gonna feel like a broken record when I say this, but there is hardly any purple in this game at all. I was going through the islands collecting cat shines and not seeing anything to get in the way, outside of a few enemies and the ground pound switches that give us unique challenges. It honestly felt like I was playing this game normally with no challenges. That continued all the way to the very end when the final Bowser battle began, and this happened. He put all of the Gigabells together in a force field ball that definitely is purple colored, and we do have to swim into it and knock the whole thing into Bowser to defeat him. So I guess we're getting robbed right at the end of here. And one last game to check. Similar to Mario Odyssey, there's quite a few purple coins around, which we must not touch. And that's a huge issue for this game, because grabbing a Wonder Flower makes a lot of them appear. Seriously, look at all of these things. It makes it impossible to make progress and actually grab the seed attached to them. This means a lot of bonus seeds are not available to us. And now I was able to complete the bonus and get the secret exit on the Bull stage by carefully avoiding the purples, but the Hoppo stage, I'll let you decide if that's gonna work. Worst of all, for even more stages, we have to go up here, but the rock won't break unless we pay them in purple coins. Yeah, sadly, there is no way we're gonna make it all the way to 10 seeds with these limited options. Ending this one off with a failure. Look at that score. Amazing performance by this game. After the first few colors in the rainbow having so many fails, the one right at the end showed them up and literally got a score more than all of the first 5 combined. What's the reason for it? Why so little purple in these games? I suppose you could realistically assume it's more of a feminine color, which wouldn't really go with the whole Mario theme. And when it is most prominent, it's usually in the form of something you wouldn't want to touch anyway, like poison. But if we take this reasoning and think about any more colors not fitting Mario's style, the next one might be just as good, if not better. Let's take a look at pink. With the first game underway, is there anything we have to watch out for at all? To be honest, there really isn't, since pink just doesn't go with anything. It's not going to be in the overworld theme, which is supposed to look like the natural outdoors, and it's not going to be in the dark underground section, since that's just all of the cooler colors. I feel as though on this one, I'm basically just repeating myself, because there's only one thing in the entire game that we could even argue is pink, and that's in the final castle. Of course, it's this pipe in the water. Is there a pink outline here? You could say that, but that's not the important part of the object. It's what's in the middle. That color would be purple, which we did count before. So touching this thing coming through is fine now. Look at that. The original game can be cleared again. Already got a win. Also, you could give yourself a win by subscribing to this channel and liking this video. Look, if you want to, I'm just saying, no pressure. What are you gonna expect from basically the same game, just a little harder? I mean, I know I can try to change it up on this new console, but the idea is no different. You think there's a theme that has pink go with it, and not with the green grass, not with the blue blocks and the dark spaces? It goes nowhere. So once again, it's difficult to call this a color challenge, but if we just go to the end of the game via the warps, nothing can really get in our way. I guess the final castle is for the second time the place where the only pink thing is. In this case, it's the bloopers. There's some of them in the water and swimming outside the water, because that's how fish work. They look pink on this version, but we shouldn't have to worry about that. We'll just sneak by. This is another easy victory. And maybe Mario sort of touches Peach's dress when she hugs him, but it doesn't count. We already won. Well, this one is a bit more interesting because there is pink. Pretty recognizable too, because it's the Shy Guys that roam around. Some of them are red, and some of them we need to completely stay away from. This does add some challenge when trying to clear levels. And technically, Birdo also fits that bill, but the fight is done by just throwing eggs, and they do all the touching for us. So with some enemies to watch out for, that pretty much concludes it all. Extra obstacles as we try to warp to the end, but nothing halting us completely, especially towards the end where it becomes even more pinkless. This one is also no problem to finish. You probably want to see another obstacle at this point, and look at that, in this game there is one. Some things are colored weirdly here, and the ground in the overworld is no exception, because it's not grass, it's not brown bricks, it's a lighter color. And the result given is that this is kind of a rose or oyster pink color. It's definitely not the hot pink that you see on the sides of the screen, but it does still fit the color that we're avoiding. After playing this game for a while and having to use this color scheme, you start to notice that there's a lot missing. I think the only pink things are the mushrooms and the one-up hearts. That's it. There's really no point in looking at this one too long, and I'm sure this is no one's favorite game anyway. Super Mario World is where the pink in the game should be stepped up, at least somewhat. And I can say there is more visible here, like the fruits on the bushes. But how much of it we actually have to touch is another story. I can say this, the first fortress we go through has pink around the girders, but if we simply jump towards those, it's in the background, and it doesn't become touchable until we press up or down to grab on. So if we're in the middle while doing that, it's safe. That makes this clearable, and in World 2, all we need is a cape to start flying. This leads us on the huge secret exit journey to reach the end as fast as possible, with basically no pink along the way. Last time there was an issue with a pipe, but not today. I basically just got to do a speedrun of one of my favorite games all the way to the end. Always gotta love seeing Bowser fly away at the end of this fight. Another handheld experience is up, and there's way more color here. Well, after business is taken care of in level 1, which zones are the important ones? I thought the Mario zone would be an issue. There's a lot of bright colors here, although pink didn't seem to come up as much as I thought. The section does end with a boss fight against pink pigs, but we can't hit them with fireballs, touchless. However, the other zone I'm thinking of involves turtles, because the last level here has all this stuff. I think we're inside a whale's mouth on this one, and if I'm not mistaken, the color associated with that is pink, right? I probably shouldn't think about it too much. It's gotta be a fail so we can get ourselves out of here. This is a game that I questioned if things were gonna work out in. I mean, we are going into Peach's castle, and pink is a popular color with her, but there was nothing immediately noticeable, and we can get into the levels no problem. There are pink bombs here too, but that's not really a problem, because even if we have to talk to them, contact is not necessary. That's really about it for the pink in here, and the Bowser levels are all free of it as well. Not that common on the interior, I guess. That means it's no challenge figuring out a way to get all the stars we need. Another win for us.
All the levels here generally must be completed fully to reach episode 7 and defeat Shadow Mario. Oh, and speaking of, that Mario does pick up Peach here, but the real Mario never does. And now then, it's time to find out which stages have pink. Let's see, Gelato Beach can be skipped completely with this glitch. Pinna Park has kind of a pink floor, but we can avoid walking there. And also a pink roller coaster that we ride, but just the car touches it, not us. Serena Beach has the casino with a lot of color around, but no pink. And Noki Bay has no shells that are too pink for us. It's actually Pianta Village that's the problem. It's because of episode 5 where we have to go down below for a secret. You're supposed to use Yoshi and hop across mushrooms, but there are way too many pink ones here. That gap can only be cleared by dismounting, in which case we can't get there because Yoshi can't spray the goop. The only way is to do this trick where we glitch into the tree and clip underneath. However, our efforts go in vain once down here because of the chucksters. The very first one in the room is pink. Well, could we jump the gap without him? I tried for a while and could not make the dive all the way over. It was really close and maybe someone could pull it off. I just know that I can't. So it seems the only option is for the pink guy to grab us and throw us over. Well, I wonder if what I'm about to say for this game is going to be true for the rest of the new Super Mario Bros. Games. But there really is hardly any pink here. For some reason, taking the warps to go right to the end means we can just skip that color. Now, of course, along the way, there are some things that are pretty close to pink and might look like it at first glance, but aren't quite there completely. So, Bowser and Bowser Jr. are still super easy to beat, just like the old days. The thing about Galaxy is it's more of an open game than the last one we looked at, in the sense that not every mission needs to be done, to a certain extent. So there's no pink in the tutorial mission that's gonna stop us. The observatory can be reached and we can get started. But despite being open, we need to get 3 stars before we can travel to areas besides Good Egg Galaxy. And it just so happens the 3rd star we get is the one where we feed a hungry Luma. They are pink themselves, and while we don't have to touch them while feeding the star bits, after the new planet forms, a launch star appears to take us there, and it's a different color from the usual orange. This one is in fact pink, and there's no way to get out of the omelet loop in this place without taking it. See, I could go through this game and try to find something pink that halts our progression, but that is becoming a very difficult task. Instead, let me just skip forward a little bit and take a look at this. Right before the official final Bowser fight is this smaller one, but with a button to destroy the bridge. And just look at what shiny color that thing is. Obviously, there's no way around pressing that, so this is a fail no matter what. The Galaxy sequel is one where we do have some freedom, just like the first game, and it also starts the same way, with most of the first few being required. Luckily, there's no pink in any of these, or in the following galaxies, so we can still get enough to open the path and get 7 total for the first gate, but some parts that are fully required are the Bowser stages. And the first one here with the Bowser Jr. involves us taking down Gobblegut. We do that by attacking the bulges all around his body. And yes, I'll admit on some parts of them, they are very close to red, but it also seems like on the sides, it does drift more into being pink. So ultimately, it does become a problem for spinning to destroy them. No way we're getting this Grand Star.
This game also just doesn't have too much worth mentioning. I've been in some cases where there were close calls with pink, or there was an object that was difficult to tell, but despite there being a set path for levels and not too many ways to skip them, there's nothing to worry about. There's not even a time where we get close to pink. You can beat this game without any concern. Now with this game, there are some points of concern to bring up. Most of the game is pink free, but I do have 2 points where it's pink full, I guess. Anyway, there's a world mushroom which looks like this, obviously not good, and it becomes an issue during the next canon. The floor here is pink, some of it at least, but lucky for us, it starts us on the much more white part, so we can jump right into the canon, and once we get launched, we go over the rest of it to the blue transition part of the stage. So that's avoided. And the other thing to mention is the switch at the end, because it's much more red this time. Before, it was lighter, but they changed the shade for the 3DS. I'll be honest, there was really only one point in this game that I was nervous about. That was level 2, because there are a lot of crystals, and some of them are very pink, and there's low ceilings. This is why you must come in with an acorn suit, so we can pretty much soar over everything. Even at the end with the secret exit, it is possible to glide up to the platform above the screen without the pink. So it's time to open up this path, and then just do a little sprint to the end, because, yep, there was nothing else pink here, and that's about all I have to say. We were just able to beat a more linear game, but this one I think we may struggle with a bit more. Well, as tradition, the secret pipe is taken to start on World 2 right away, and we can complete a few in here, but you know how this game goes. Every level tries to feel different, and colors help with that. A double cherry pass specifically is what I'm thinking of now. Well, we don't start on the pink ground, and a few jumps can be made to not touch any of it. The cat suit really helps in the first room, but our greatest enemy is pipes. Once we go through, we're locked out of movement until hitting the ground, and of course, our back feet are dipping right into that pink spot. It's weird how many times it puts us on the physical line between 2 different colors. I wonder how this is gonna go. Well, let's see. Cap has no pink, big surprise. Cascade is almost good, except for the hat on Chain Chompkins. We can knock it off just fine. And Sand has some pink in the town, but we don't need any of it. So that brings us on to Lake. And you know what's special about that? Whoa, the moons here are pink. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. If only I had already beaten this game hundreds of times before. You know how last time we got through the whole game and had it end at the final fight? Well, that seems unlikely this time, since I'm pretty sure the only pink on every island is Pom Pom and her slicer. So it is very easy to reach the end and defeat Bowser. But then comes the same sequence with us chasing the 3 Gigabells. And now, I thought they were just in the purple force field the whole time, but I looked more closely at it and realized the color changes when a hit is made, and by the time of the 3rd one, it's pretty pink. Unfortunately, it is the same exact thing stopping us from finishing. Okay, so kind of like Odyssey, we know this one is failing, but there's still some funny stuff to talk about. The first world and the main part of the map are totally smooth sailing, but then we move worlds, and I actually haven't beaten this game hundreds of times, so I thought World 2 had the pink seeds, since, I mean, come on, this is what it looks like. But no, they're turquoise. However, the pink color of the world does translate translate into a required level. This one, with these compressible platforms. I think we'll need Yoshi for this. With his flutter, we actually can get over and through just about everything. There is one difficult part in the middle, but you know what? Shout out to Red Falcon for figuring out you can use a Koopa to assist in making it over. So it turns out this whole thing can be cleared. In fact, that goes for the rest of the world. And then we get to World 3, where the seeds are the color I was thinking of before. Yeah, may have to end with grabbing these, but still, it was a fun ride.
So it looks like we have a score of 10, and that is pretty solid, but it turns out we can make it even better. Because a few days ago, I was chillin', watching videos, and I found this one by a creator called Ascend Joker 1, who, through the use of complicated tricks that are way above my pay grade, actually managed to beat all of Mario Galaxy 1 without Pink. And I really recommend you check out this video to see how it's done. This means Pink actually gets a score of 11. Over half of them, which is honestly absurd. Even on the games that failed, it wasn't because of some big thing, but more so just one small collectible that was required. Not a lot of pink in these games at all. Maybe it's just too close to Mario's main red color. This is going to be a tough score to beat. These last few have their work cut out for them. But now let's see what the deal is with brown.
Well, we haven't even started yet. We're still on the title screen, and it's not looking good. Heading into the classic 1-1, we get immediately stopped because the ground here is not grass or sand or anything like that. It's just brown blocks. It's not like it's even that. There's the floating bricks that are brown, Goombas under everything, and even a separate type of block that is still brown. What was on their minds when they were thinking about this? Yeah, this is a fail and a half. Thank goodness we have a different setup with the lost levels on this version. But while there might be grass to stand on now, most of the other brown is still present. All these bricks in the way still make things a lot more difficult, and there's still the other stackable blocks. Although, I did check the color on these, and it did not list them as brown. It appears it's light enough that it can be listed as orange. That means this jump can just barely be made to continue along the course. With this information of only needing to avoid the bricks, we can make some good progress here. So while that gets taken care of, probably a good time to like and subscribe. We're almost at 50K. A couple warps can be used to go through worlds very fast, and just as always, we can get right to World 8. But the difficulty picks up here because it's very hard to avoid both the bricks and the Hammer Bros all in one go. But that part is actually doable. 8-2 is not, simply because it's required that we jump up here and hit this brick to spawn in the vine. They hid the goal really well in this, and forced you into the clouds. How about this sequel of a game on the NES? We do start in a room with a bunch of green hills, and that's nice to see. And even outside, much more of the ground is filled with grass, so we can also get places. Things only become an issue here once we reach the cave. This seems like an area we want to avoid. No worries, because outside we can do a cool high jump to skip that section entirely. And now we can just make our way up the vines to the end, and what do we see at the top? The exact same problem. How do we not touch all of this? Well, by using Mario, there is absolutely no way. He is too slow and too low. But I did switch to Luigi just to see if anything would happen. And check this out. By high jumping right at the edge, we can soar through the air and make it all the way to the Birdo arena. At this point, we can defeat the boss, and we just have to make sure that we can jump inside the mouth to go to the next level. I don't know. I think we can allow that. And everything I just showed would be cool if level 2 didn't start us immediately on that brown surface, totally negating everything. Well, it's still fun to do, even if sometimes it gets cut Is this game going to be as complicated? At first, it would seem like that's not the case, because everything here feels a lot lighter, and all the things that are usually brown are not this time. Even the Goombas. Well, most of them. We can actually get through the first 3 levels and grab ourselves a warp whistle with no trouble. It's when trying to get that second warp whistle though, because we would need to grab ourselves the Tanuki leaf in order to fly up to the area to get it. It definitely looks to be brown shaded here. But before I go around this and try to get to World 8 some other way, it's not like it would be possible once we got there, because look at the tank and the airship levels. I actually did try to avoid all of the brown spots in the first auto-scroller, and from what I've seen, I think it can be done with perfect jumps. Although, once you get to the end, you still gotta go in the pipe and get dropped into here anyway with no safe spot at all. Unfortunately, no way around this. This game is almost always a unique case of color being very odd, and here we have determined that the sand on the floor is not brown, but there are still some bricks in the air that can get us, and unfortunately, I can't get footage for everything we do here, but we can avoid all of the bricks in levels 1 and 2. By the time we get to the first castle, everything is much too brown to pass by at all. Okay, let's see what moving up in consoles does for us now. Well, I'll say this. We can obviously get through the first level in the run by sprinting to the finish, although one thing I did not consider after this was the dirt on the semi-solid platforms. Then you add the swinging things in, and it's a mess. However, there is a glitch here to give us an orb, which I thought would be helpful, except we need Yoshi, and to get him, we have to jump on him while he's touching the brown block. Yes, this counts because I'm controlling him now. And not to mention, even if we did get it, we'd still have to hit the dirt before being able to jump up and grab the orb. It's sad this couldn't work out. For an upgrade in the handheld department, we do also get a couple of themes here that would be an issue. I mean, look at the variety of zones going on. One of them involves a tree, and generally bark on those things are known to be brown, so not too surprised that this is where the level started us. Also, the macro zone doesn't really work either, since we go far underground and there's not going to be any grass at that point. So many ways we get blocked. I never know how this one is gonna go, but I'm ready for it. So ready, in fact, I finally got my first Lakitu skip and went through the door. We're gonna allow these and just say Mario touched only the door knobs. Entering Bob-omb Battlefield, there is quite a lot of brown to avoid touching, but I have a few tricks to only stay on the grass. We can triple jump to get up to this section, see that the chain chomp pole is also brown, so instead, warp with the flowers, slide kick up the giant slope in the back, and then, most importantly, do a sick jump off of this wall to pull up to the next section. Then all it takes is one triple jump up to the top arena. Goodness, all this work for 1 star. Well, at least Womp's Fortress is easier. Some stars are still impossible thanks to the bricks, but we can still make do with a couple of the main ones. Then combined with the last few from Cool Cool Mountain, we can just barely get enough. Unfortunately, as we go to the first Bowser level, it all goes to waste by the bridge. A triple jump dive is not gonna cut it, so we are basically out of options here. Yeah, not too much movement tech. I didn't know how this would be either. I mean, it seems like a bright and sunny game with colors that shouldn't be a problem, but let's not forget, things start kind of dark in this game, and there is quite a lot of goop in Delfino Plaza that is also brown. Thankfully, though, we can just spray it with water, getting rid of it all, meaning we don't need to make contact. Heading into Bianco Hills, we see that it's not all gone completely, but we don't have to deal with it this time, since we can head up to the windmill right away. There's some brown
here, but this wood in the middle is alright to touch, meaning PD Piranha can be defeated. But the next mission takes us to the first secret zone, where color variety is most plentiful. That is noticed right here when we get to these boxes. All of them look exactly the same, and there's way too many to jump over them all. Flood had to be taken away at exactly the wrong moment for this. Back into this style of game, and honestly, there was way less brown here than I thought there would be. Mostly we're running on grass, or if it's in a darker area, it's not brown. We can easily get to the first cannon of this game, taking us to World 5, and out of everything that we could find here, really just one part concerned me. That was the ghost house, which would take us to the next cannon, but I was pleasantly surprised to just find a bunch of gray everywhere in here, and not brown wood. So, we actually can get to World 8 on the fastest path. It seems like we would have kind of a hard time making it to the end of here, though. Especially when you factor in 8-2, which has these barrels for us to jump across. And now, sure, we can swim around all of them and get to the switch, but when going back the other way, it's clear that we have to get on top of them to make the jump to the pipe. Yeah, I tried this many times, and it's close, but it's not gonna work. The only way is to use those brown spinning things. The Galaxy game actually starts out fine enough, since if we just stay on the path, we can avoid all of the dirt there is. And before reaching the castle, we just have to jump onto the grass. And now we can make our way to space, where you'd think brown wouldn't be as prevalent. Well, actually, there is still that color all around this planet. But I did my best to avoid it. Catching the bunny in the grass is no problem. By long jumping into the crater, we can get that bunny out and get dropped back on the grass. Then lure that guy to the water. And finally, by going into the correct pipe, that last one is manageable too. So we can continue with this one, and even use the first launch star for the main mission. If only it didn't drop us right onto what we put so much work to avoid earlier. Not like I ever expected anything more. I mean, how would we have even cleared these Goombas to get the keys, right? The second game in this series hits us with a little situation that we might be all too familiar with. So World 1 is pretty much no problem, except for the fact that we still can't hit blocks. I don't want to jump up to the blocks because they turn from yellow to brown, but I need some sort of boost to get up here for the secret exit. Well, I decided to go back to level 1 and remembered some advice I was given in a previous video. Just take a Koopa shell and kick him into the block, releasing the item, giving us the propeller mushroom and allowing us to fly up to the secret area. So we can enter the cannon and go to World 5. But the piranha plant becomes an issue since there's a brown surface beneath. While we can get all the toad coins, the chest won't open up until we actually touch the ground. This is an issue, and while we could go around this to other worlds, the airship in World 8 is also going to get in our way. Kind of a classic color for these ships, aren't they? Some games have been a little suspenseful, and we've made at least a little bit of distance. But not for the Galaxy games, because once we go into the castle gate, right on the other side is more brown dirt. Why must there be so much brown in every game? Oh, and also Bowser is giant and destroying everything, I guess. That's pretty unfortunate too. With this being a game much more linear and also filled with a lot of dirt, my hopes are not super high going in, especially because we still can't hit blocks or even grab the Tanuki leaf even if we could get it out. That doesn't sound very good, but at least we can make it out of the first world through the use of a warp. But the second level in that part surprisingly hits us with an obstacle. Not what you're seeing right now, it's actually at the end because the pipe drops us right onto the brown dirt before we can beat the level. Insulting way to send us off, now that I think about it. here's another situation where it looks as though World 1 gives us all mostly bright colors and no brown in sight, so we can use the cannons to take us to these special worlds. And maybe there would be an issue with taking on those, like the ghost houses, for example. And then there's another issue with the ghost house in the final world as well. Multiple ways to stop our path here too. Got a bit of an interesting setup on this one. If your idea of interesting is something like we've already seen, well, I will say we can pick up an acorn suit in the first level, and after we grab the secret exit to skip over to Soda Jungle, that helps us with the first level there and clearing all those. A lot of brown in this environment. Unfortunately, no amount of height helps us with the fortress because they put a giant brick block as your surface to enter the pipe. So that route is gone, and similar situation with World 1 and the last castle there. This time, because everything is brown. All this wood just sits right in the lava for some reason. You know, in this game, I can at least tap the block with my pointer to give us a catsuit and help out. But beyond that, would you be surprised to hear this sequel game plays just like the original? Because the warp over to World 2 is still taken just like always. And the first desert level here actually did give me a run for my money. I'm gonna call the sand we start on yellow, but there's still a ton of brown spots. It requires some good platforming to get around, and towards the end, some very precise running to reach the goal. This one can actually be cleared, unlike this rolling hill stage. You might be thinking, what do you mean? This is all bright colors. Well, yeah, until it's not, because there's also an underground section, with honestly maybe the most amount of brown I've seen in one area. Dang, dude. Well, here it is, the first color for this game that is not shared with any moons, so we actually have a shot. It's a long shot, though, because there's a lot of brown rock and cascade. However, we can make our way up the grass for the first bit, and after the first moon, make a really far jump to bypass the bridge and make it so that Mario and Cappy don't hit brown. And now, I couldn't use the dino because I'd have to step on the edge of those brown spots to fall and do the skip, but we can take the long way up and still get to the boss through another cool jump. A cascade can be cleared, and sand also goes well because it's all red, orange, yellow, whatever. It's not brown. But in Wooded, unfortunately, there is a path for us when we step off the Odyssey, and they start us on the brown dirt instead of all the grass. I get it, they tried to be helpful, but it didn't work out so great. This one is always very tough to judge because there's not too many required sections in this game. At least at the very beginning, we have to go across the first ship, which is brown. But there's also a red carpet across the middle, which is enough for us to avoid it. Then we have the rest of the game to go through, and so much freedom to collect 50 cat shines. And as for the required stuff, we can actually jump all the way to the end of the game in the final battle because of Plessy. He is needed for the ending, and he will count once we jump on him. But sadly, that means we have to touch the brown dock that he was on to dive in. So we can't finish off Bowser in the state, but I did still try to do the battle because there's brown ramps here too. I tried to see if you could still hit him without those, and you appear too slow unless you do a perfect jump when going around the very last ramp. So this might be difficult and take you a while, but you could probably do it. But still not the whole game, so it's another fail. One game left for the title. Can it be done? The thing is, Wonder is also set up pretty good for this challenge because we can just collect the seeds that are in the convenient levels for us. But there are still some required points that must be passed. And in the early stages, that goes well. No brown to fear for quite some time. Happy to say that we can make the most amount of progress here than we ever have. Some levels try to take us down with boxes along the way, but even with everything going on in the airship, we got past it. I sure hope there's not some random required level in the fungi mines that's just gonna start us on
Oh, yeah, we have to clear a lot of stages in this game, so our chances were not looking good. Sad to say, this game remains winless, and this color as a whole is completely winless.
The colors that start with B, not getting a lot of love here, but unlike the other 0 score that we got, I can't say I'm too surprised with this result. If you have games with a lot of green grass, good chance that there's going to be some brown dirt alongside it, so you just get put in a lot of impossible situations. Then you also add in some wood features that also fit the bill, and none of it works. Never a good feeling to have that on there, but it's gotta happen for some of them. At least there's this, one more B color in the lineup, so maybe the curse can be broken now. Up next is black. Starting with the original as always, and before we begin, I'm gonna mention this. There's a black stripe or outline around a lot of things here, and we are not going to be counting any of those, the same way we wouldn't count shadows or the background. It's not really a part of the object, meaning we can get through everything in the first level easily. And speaking of the background, how about this whole situation in 1-2? I know the color black is obviously very visible here, but think of it like this. If you put yourself in a room and turn off all the lights, making it pitch black, you're not actually touching that color, even if it is all you see. The point is, it's the background, doesn't count. All of this in mind, it means we can soar right to World 8. And now here is where the actual black comes in. The buzzy beetles start to form, but the biggest challenge is 8-2 with all of the bullet bills. It takes a few careful jumps to dodge all of the bullets and the cannons themselves, but it does look pretty cool when done successfully. After that, we just avoid the hammers in 8-3, but we would have done that anyway. So we can head to the castle where everything looks to be totally fine, and we can run over to that axe to get a win and break the B color curse. And while we're at it, we can break another curse, which is all of you not being subscribed, so you should totally do that. And like this video to change your luck if you feel like it. This is honestly a pretty similar deal with mostly the exact same obstacles in the way, and nothing for us to really avoid in the first few themes with all of the information we had. The castles in this game are a different color from before, but they still look to be a bluish-gray kind of color. The biggest change is the fact that this game is harder, so the enemies like the bullets show up earlier, prompting us to do even more cool jumps. But overall, there's not too much in the way for it to be too hard of a challenge. I actually really enjoyed avoiding the color on these when I needed to. With all of that done, we can go ahead and make it 2 for 2, sealing our second win. Here we go again on this one with the black void in the background right there. At this point, it's not an issue, although once we step outside into the main part of the game, something needs to be noted. When we pick up the potion from the ground, it creates a door for us to go into, leading to a parallel universe where everything is black. Yeah, that's not gonna work. In that case, it wouldn't be the background, it would be what we're actually touching. This means we won't be able to warp to any worlds, so all 20 levels need to be beaten. Well, the first one goes about as smoothly as you can get all the way through, but I remembered, as soon as the second one started, we would have to deal with the Pidgeot again. We have to pick up the black bird and throw him off the carpet to ride it ourselves. It's the only way to cross this huge gap, is what I thought, but then I switched to Peach and tried to use her floating to get over it. Just so happens we can get a few good jumps off these birds and fly right over there carpetless. From that point forward, we have no black things at all for the rest of this world and for all of World 2. However, something is eventually going to get us, and it just so happens to be in World 3. We have to jump our way up these clouds to get to the top of the waterfall, but at a certain point, the Pidgeot returns and we need the carpet now. Peach is good for horizontal distance, but we're definitely not getting enough vertical distance with any player. There is another path down the waterfall leading to this room, room, but that's meant for taking a warp with the potion, which we've already established we can't do. So with this door leading us back to here, it seems we are completely stuck. This game goes about how you would expect at the start. There's a lot more shadows on these objects because, you know, it's a stage play. But the important thing to know is that we see no solidly black objects through any of these levels in World 1. Even if we are going to run both in front of and behind that black part at the end of the stage, either way we can get both the warp whistles from this and take a quick journey to World 8. But how do the tank and airship stages go? I mean, it starts us right here on that ground that looks very black. I'm a little confused though because I don't know what this surface is. There's colored lines on top, but the solid color is definitely black. I'm gonna have to count it, but maybe I'm just leaning that way because I don't want to have to try and avoid all of the actual black objects here since that looks horrible. Well, how about this? Me using the colored version of this game doesn't matter now. It actually helps me in this case by adding in color on the ground so we don't immediately start on a spot that's too dark. It can get us through a little bit, but of course, there's still going to be some platforms that get us along the way. No matter how new it looks, you can't escape the retro-ness of it all. This one's interesting because I didn't know if we would actually run into any black obstacles here. So the first few levels have nothing to worry about as it's pretty bright and colorful all the way through. I still love how this game looks. But as we get to Iggy's Fortress, there's an issue with these grates. And now they are in the background until we press up to grab them. In this case, we are touching the black bars, so we can't get over the lava on this part. But I thought of using the orb glitch to get around this. There's another issue with that, though, as it spawns at the top of the screen when using it. Well, we can jump up to it, but it's gotta be in the right spot because we'll still die using it here. So if we go a little further down, then jump off the Koopa, it's possible to grab it with no fence at all and clear the stage. With that complete, it should be the final obstacle on our path, and now we just take all of the secret exits to get to the final stage as fast as possible. And there is another grate here, but this time we can avoid it with a cool cape trick. Through the last dark room and onto the final arena we go to defeat Bowser and take another win on this one. Onto a game with zones, and yeah, there's definitely not going to be anything black in this colorful intro level. So which zone is the important one to check? Well, I would think most of these would be pretty clear, but the one that stands out is the pumpkin zone. Orange and black are kind of the signature Halloween colors. Well, the first level seems pretty good, as there's actually just kind of red bricks everywhere. Okay, blood color, that makes sense. But as we get deeper into the zone, everything becomes a little darker. I was hesitant on this part and didn't know if the platforms were actually black or if they were just light enough. We could count that, but we could also count the boss at the end of it. It starts us right on the black cauldrons that witches are known for using, and they're kind of also known for wearing black clothes like this. There's no way getting this golden coin is happening with all that. We're gonna have to check the castle on this one because there might be an issue here. Well, the bridge outside is definitely not black. However, once we go through the door, we see that most of the floor follows a black and white checkered pattern. At least it doesn't start us there, so we can jump to the door on the left, as well as make a cool jump into the painting. So we can make our way through Bob-omb Battlefield, although Chain Chomp would prove to be a bigger nuisance than usual. But that star might be the star that we have to get, since we can't throw King Bob-omb. Alright, so we can still ground pound the pole in order to get the star behind the gate, but when we exit the painting, yeah, look at that. It planted us right on that checkered pattern and Mario's foot is on a black square. And even if we could BLJ, it still wouldn't work because you'd have to touch that same floor to get in position anyway. how many colors will we find on our little vacation? Well, despite Delfino Plaza being darker at first, there really isn't anything black around. It's easy enough to open Bianco Hills and get a few shines there, but then comes Rico Harbor, which is now covered in black goop. Thankfully, we don't have to directly touch any of this to open it up. The water does all the work. Except the goop doesn't go away once in the stage. It's still over there, right off the shore, which is kind of a problem for shine number 2. We have to get on a blooper to go surfing, and from the rules we've used before, we are now in control of that, so it would count too. And we've got to drive right over that goop to get in the tunnel. Can't finish this race if we can't even reach the starting line. I wonder if these games are gonna have a similar mechanic between all of them. Well, I started this one and noticed that there were basically no issues for most of it, but then I reached the cannon part of the world and realized we can't go into it because, you know, we have to sit right in the black part before getting fired. So the main levels have to all be beaten. And that definitely takes longer, but we can still make a lot of progress. One thing's for sure though, we have to clear World 8, and the fact that there is a volcano might be a problem, because there is a lot of soot on the ground coming from that, which makes the floor a lot darker. Most of the other rocks were gray, but I don't think I can accept this one. It has always been very difficult to make progress in these games, and I know that some of you are itching to see it succeed. Well, the main path in the intro actually does not have any black on it, and we can get the first Grand Star without a problem. And now the lights are off on the observatory, effectively making everything black, but enough of them turn on by the time we're in control. From there, we can enter the first few galaxies and collect everything we need. There's a few points where it was a close call, but it does seem as though we can collect 8 stars. And then comes the first Bowser Galaxy, which is obviously required. This one is all about a giant robot named Megaleg, and he is mostly a dangerous color. There is very little chance of climbing him without touching the black. Even if we could land on the colored arrows to go up, once we reach the top, we've got to walk around this whole thing and guide the bullets to get the Grand Star. Yeah, we made more progress here, but this game remains fully defeated. Unfortunately, we might have a rough go with this game, because we can clear a few levels, but we're gonna run into the same problem with the cannon and have no way to skip worlds. After that, it seems like the first fortress was gonna be what stopped us, but actually this one is totally fine to get all the way to the top. It's the main castle with the issue, because these spinning gears are absolutely black shaded. I mean, we can go back and get a propeller mushroom to go through some of them, but at this point, they're gonna start interlocking with each other, and there's no way we're getting through. I was actually feeling optimistic about this one. It seemed like we could get a lot of stars here, even if there's a good few that are required. Although, one thing I noticed is that I couldn't get any checkpoints because I'd have to touch the black flag to change it. I didn't think that would be an issue outside of making the game harder, but it turns out the game forces you into one of these. That would be the first star of Spin Dig. Coming off Toad's ship just before the boss, you can try to jump over the flag, but that launch star won't have it, and it'll send you into the black against your will. As always, it's a little easier to follow this one, since we have a straight path forward through levels. One thing I will say though, it's very fortunate that there's a warp pipe in 1-2 to skip the rest of that world. It allows us to skip the castle and keep going. From there, really nothing is black on our path ahead. There's a super long stretch of levels where nothing stands in our way for a while, but there is another castle at the end of World 5, and the reason that's an issue is because of the Bowser chase. Specifically at the end with the switch. There's a lot of black on there for his signature look, and we're gonna have to touch some of it to press it down and beat the stage. The levels in this game are pretty similar to the other 2Ds and don't feature a lot of black in them, but what is nice is how the cannons are blue this time instead of black, so we can shoot off from them for some world skips. Makes it very easy to get past a world mushroom and a world flower to end up all the way at the end. What's surprising is that there are some more close calls, but everything looks to be doable in getting us to the final castle. But right at the last second is where we run into an issue. The checkered pattern on the floor continues before the final fight, and if that wasn't enough, in the first phase itself, the bridge does appear to be black. Maybe a little debatable there, but I do think it's dark enough. So it looks like this one is going down right at the finish as well. And now to the last game in this series, and it also goes a lot better. This is because now instead of having 8 different maps for each world and using a cannon to travel between them, now they're all connected and we can just walk to them with no worry of color at all. Getting to Soda Jungle is easy, and getting through that to eventually get to the clouds also goes really well. And now at this point, everything we do is required. The first few levels here have some black things, like more bullet bills, but it's fun to get around those. And in the fortress, there's these platforms, which must be used to get up. I thought they looked black at first, but I checked, and it looks like they are a medium gray. So this is allowed, but we can't move on from this too much longer because here comes Ludwig's castle. Okay, yeah, these platforms can't get the gray pass. This is black that can't be avoided. I think I'm realizing that black is not too common in these games, but there always seems to be something that gets in the way. In the case of 3D World, though, I didn't seem to be running into anything that took me down. There are also a lot of things that fit into the gray category more than black as well, so it kind of makes sense in the case that anytime there's dirt, it's actually safe. I kept entering levels thinking it was gonna end, but it never did. This game went for way longer than I thought. So much so, I ended up using the World 4 secret pipe, and I've never made it far enough to do that. Even on this boss intermission, there's a checkered floor, but it starts us on the white square. This means we can make it all the way to the end of World 6. Well, kind of, because we do still have to go through another boss before reaching World Castle, and the floor this time is the exact same problem. It actually does start us on the black tile this time. A little bit of a relief, because I don't know if I could have avoided all of them during the fight, as well as the black on the boss himself. Well, I think we all know what's coming, and I know some have been waiting for this. We start by getting launched from the Mushroom Kingdom to Cap Kingdom, and the main color of that place is the color we can't touch. So as soon as we stand up, right when we gain control, it's all over. Can't even make it 1 second past here. Slight issue with this game would be the goop that's all over, and we get sucked into it right away, but we're not dropped onto it, instead just some dirt from the footprint. Now we just need to not fall off the platforms and not touch Bowser. Thankfully, we can get rid of him with the first cat shine and open up a lot more space. That means we can collect a total of 5 shines no problem, and that's when the beast awakens. But wait, I said we can't touch Fury Bowser. Kind of bad for this, considering in this first fight he does not drop any spikes on us, so we have nothing to throw at him. I thought we could get around this by only ground pounding his stomach, but as that's being done, there's still enough black spots on him for it to count. We're too big for it to work. And for the last game, I wonder if we can break the dry spell. Here's how it goes. Once again, levels take place in the daytime and have a lot of color. So just like always, a little bit of progress is made. But of course, there is only one fitting way this could end, because it's always the castle that gets us. Interestingly, it's not even the main part of the level with black in it. It's the Bowser Jr. boss battle. You'll notice that as the fight ramps up, up and he has more phases, his head and bib over his face turns black. So jumping on him at this point is not really possible, and unfortunately, that's where this one has to finish. Nice, we got some wins on this. And once again, most of it is on the older crowd. And not counting outlines for objects definitely saved us here because it would have been really tough otherwise. And because the NES and SNES games feature a lot of those without solid black objects, it went pretty well. And then you have a lot of cases in the newer stuff where as soon as you reach the final world close to Bowser, you're screwed. And it makes sense. Even the darkest shade plays its part to tie the whole game together. But now let's lighten it up a bit more and look at a pretty interesting one, gray. The thing about this game is that each theme kind of has a main color in it that is everywhere. In the overworld, the ground that you would walk on is brown. And then for the underground, it's that navy blue. These themes are great because gray is nowhere to be seen for any of them. Other colors we see involve things like green for the pipes or yellow for the blocks, and it looks to be pretty good. Maybe we could have made it through all these levels with just that, but there's one that doesn't pop up till the end. The castle, and what's the main color there? Yep, it's gray. See all those bricks there? Can't avoid them. And that's basically the entire level. All the pipes and most of the enemies are the same. It's almost like it mocks you for getting so close yet being so far. Now we come to the next game, and I'm still using the different version for this. I thought it might give us a little bit of hope since we know what theme got us last time. Well, happy to say, the first few didn't change too much. It's just in the overworld, we see green a lot more than brown this time. But still, no gray as we take our warp adventures through here. And we get to have a castle theme a bit earlier here since we have to beat World 4. Well, it's not the same kind of bricks, and the coloring is a little different, but I think this is still gray. It's not copy and pasted, but the same idea is still there. And you think I don't have experience with that? Now this game, well, I didn't think I'd have any issues here, and things started out pretty well. There are also kind of some main colors for certain stages in the sequel, but gray escapes most of it. Better yet, we can actually use the warp since the parallel universe is accessible, and throughout this whole thing, I hardly saw anything that was gray. I suppose maybe some Shy Guys made the cut and a few other random things around, but nothing big enough to stop us completely. With very little difficulty, we run all the way to World 7 and just have to dodge a few more of these guys when going through, to then eventually reach the end and take down the final boss. That gives this game a win after having some struggles recently. Except Mario does pull a gray plug off this pipe once we go through the door, but we're not letting that affect it because we just beat it. If I was speedrunning the game, the timer would have ended just before that. Anything afterwards is not my problem. What is my problem is you not being subscribed to this channel, obviously. Do all of us a favor by taking care of that and liking this video. What's the harm, right? Going back to a more normal game in this series sounds good, but there might also be some familiar problems that we'll have to face. The early themes, once again, have no gray at all since they are very bright and sunny. Now the thing is, this block is white, so we can crouch on it to fall through and lead us to one warp whistle. But then, to get the other one, we would have to go into the fortress. That's a problem, because look, Bowser still kept this brick layout for that castle and doomed us from passing inside. Although, before I gave up that quickly, I did check some other options. Like, what if we use the one whistle we have to go as far as possible, World 4? There's probably going to be some other castles we must enter at some point, although I did try my best by grabbing a cloud from the Hammer Bro duel. That allowed me to skip right over this, but unfortunately, there's 2 levels with that theme by the end of the world, and the gray will not go away. Even if we somehow got past all of that, the infamous pipes at the end of the airship sections would be an issue no matter what world we're in. It's just a huge roadblock all the way through. Alright, I'm still going to be using the colored version for this game because if I didn't, it would be finished almost immediately. Although, putting some brightness in the game really isn't going to help that much because it still retains some of the original shadings in it. Specifically, one thing that I talked about before would be the gray doorway at the end of a level. Usually, I would let something like this slide, as it seems like we don't physically touch it and it's in the background. However, walking all the way to the right and the cutscene activating tells me there was at least a little contact being made. This is also pretty much the only gray thing in the game, which is unfortunate, but that's how it's gonna go. I went into this one thinking it would be kind of like the NES games and just end right when we got to one of the castles. I'm not saying it's not gonna go like that, but here's what happened. So the first level we have to do is really easy as we just run to the right. But then in this stage, after that, we jump across a few platforms and come across these that go back and forth. It's a bit questionable, but it does look as though those are spotted gray. So I had to find a way to get over not just one, but two of them. Bouncing on the Koopas seemed to be promising, but I kept coming up just short. Then in trying this, I saw the blocks down below and got an idea. What if I go the other way on the map and got to the yellow switch to press it? Now, if we drop down, the blocks will, if we drop down, the blocks will, oh my gosh, what is going on? Anyway, we can land on the yellow blocks and then run and make this jump to the pipe. I got kind of stuck at this point, though. Technically, I could grab a Koopa and try to shell jump up here, but I didn't get enough height. And then I realized something. I'm an idiot. Okay, well, we all knew that already, but I realized I could just grab a Yoshi out of this level. The colors actually aren't preventing us this time. By getting a running start and jumping off, we can get enough height to get over both of these. Then, a bit down the line, we reach the first checkpoint, which is good, except there's another gap with these same platforms. Huh, okay, alright, let's die, go back to the overworld, grab another Yoshi from this level, then go back in here where the checkpoint is still activated. And now with this second jump, we actually can clear the whole thing and finally reach the goal. Good grief, that took a long time to figure out. But was it worth it? No, because you know that thing with the fortress? Yeah, it's also gray. But you know what, it's cool. I think I've played this game enough today. Hopefully this is not as complicated, but here's a little something to get your mind going. Astronomy pop quiz. One simple question, what color is the moon? Okay, fine, maybe that's a little too subjective because of certain conditions and the position of it, but either way, I think most would answer pretty gray. And hey, that certainly would be true for the space zone in this game. Yeah, look at that ground we have to jump across here. It's not bright enough beyond our world, I guess. Moving on to 3D time, and I had a sneaking suspicion about what was going to happen in this. Well, actually, for the longest time, I had it in my memory that the bridge was white, but no, it definitely appears to be gray when looking closely. And fans of this game should know it's required to step on it to make it to the castle, even with Lakitu Skip. I mean, I did try to jump onto the castle to see if it would help, but I'm very bad at this game, so I couldn't do it. So I switched over to my 120 star file just to get up there and test it. But yeah, even if we jump off like this, there's no way to reach that door without the gray. Might have a similar situation with this one, because there is kind of the same material for the airstrip. Well, it is mostly white here, and maybe you could say there's some gray pebbles on this piece of land, but I was willing to look past it and jump over here to grab Flood. However, even if we do begin the game and collect the first shine, after going through all the cutscenes, we are rewarded by starting in Delfino Plaza and having our foot on a gray square. You just had to plant us right in that exact spot, didn't you? So I wonder if we will happen to run into any of the same problems. Well, would it ring any bells if I told you that the overworld theme looks pretty clear, and that everything seems to be alright until we reach the first fortress of the game? Sadly, it starts us directly on a gray moving platform, which are supposed to be helpful here, but now are anything but that. The worst part is that this is where the secret exits would start for this game, but I guess that cannon's not getting used. Let's see, we go through a little storybook here. Peach invites us to the castle, standard stuff, Mario trots on over, and oh no! The rock path that is so nicely laid out for us just ends it right away. It's always a little insulting when the game ends the moment we gain control. There's something about all of these 2D games that might come into play, and no, I'm not talking about the ground or enemies around these parts. There's basically no gray at all, outside of the very end with the flagpole. Obviously, touching that is required to move on, and I know what you're thinking. Why don't you just grab it from the top? Well, even if we try to do that, Mario's legs will still make contact, so this pole is going to kill the run no matter what. You know, this time I am very grateful for the changed up intro in this Galaxy game. This time we start on a bunch of grass in a 2D space and simply walk to the right, and eventually it transitions into dirt, which is also safe. But hey, compared to the first game, we are absolutely crushing it right now. And I want you to keep that mindset in your head because it's time to walk to the bridge. These Lumas... Okay, apparently Lumas got autocorrected to Pumas in the script. These Lumas are so helpful to us, and while giving us their explanation, actually have us stand on this gray surface again. Don't see that every day. We never made it to space in either game, and the exact same object from another game just stopped us. You would think that this game has a decent amount of potential, because what kind of level themes here are gray? The first level goes about as smoothly as you could imagine, and while there are flagpoles in this game as well, they apparently got repainted to more of a safer shade, so we can actually get somewhere. It just so happens that somewhere is right into a trap with the underground. I know that visually, the main color theme of this place is supposed to be blue, but you can pretty clearly see that what's on the floor is a little different and would be more of a bluish gray kind of deal. Dang. It seems that the handheld games are, for some reason, a lot more generous when it comes to certain things. Like how, after the first level, the pole could easily be gray, but this time it was also kept as more white. And I did have a bit of a concern about certain objects as we go through World 1, but having the right power-ups comes in handy. Also, there is significantly less gray in this fortress, so the secret exits can actually begin here. Now it's the time to go through a World Mushroom and World Flower to hop between cannons and get to the end. But let me just show you what happens when we do get to the end. First level in that lava theme, and there you go. Honestly, it didn't fully register for me at first glance because these rocks do look to be pretty dark, but I think we haven't left that gray territory altogether. Alright, well, I don't think this one is going to be too hard to think about. It's a console new game that was designed very similarly to the Wii version. So is anyone surprised at all when we see the pole at the end is gray? I'm sure not surprised. I don't even know why this segment was necessary, and now I don't know why we haven't switched yet. I guess for some reason I have to show this part of me landing right on the edge of the flagpole base. Oh look, there it is. Yeah, so cool, and gray has been touched now.
And now, I might be giving you another part of this that you don't want to hear. I'm sure we can remember how 3D Land went, right? Well, in this experience, there is a bit more gray to avoid in the first level itself, even though it's not much. And the flagpole is back to white. This allows us to get through on the condition that the next underground level does not follow the same pattern. Like, as soon as I go through this pipe, am I gonna see... oh crap. I don't know, maybe because of the shining light, we could say I'm starting on more of a blue spot instead of the actual gray sand. But there's no way we're getting through everything here without hitting those big danger spots. Okay, so obviously there might be an issue that comes up in this game. That would, of course, be Cap Kingdom. And now, I've seen some mixed reviews on whether the ground here is black or gray. And you know what? I think it's both. You can see striped patterns, which are 2 different colors. And now it starts us on the black one, meaning we just have to avoid all of the gray as we go through. But after trying that for a bit, I thought it would be easier to just hop on the rail and go across, since that's completely black. However, we can't escape this cutscene starting where we first talk to Cappy. And after he becomes our companion, we start again on this spot on the floor. Unfortunately, that spawn point is on the gray that we need to avoid. So this kingdom is clearly not good for either color. Well, kind of like what almost happened last game, there has to be one color that is unavoidable from the start, because the ground has to be something. And in this case, when we get dropped into Lake Lapcat, we fall right onto Bowser's footprint, which has made all of this dirt underneath very gray. It's like we're taken right back to that underground theme that we've seen before. Not often you see fails so early in this game, but there are some situations where there is just no way. One more to finish it out, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going to come of this. It's not like any of the seeds in this are gray, and I mostly remember everything here being pretty colorful. Even the flagpoles won't stop us, because they are very much white this time, even if it is a console game. Getting a lot of seeds in the first world was going pretty well. I think the only gray thing at all was this pole in the Wiggler race, but if there was one thing that would catch me off guard, it would be bringing back a classic, which is the castle. It's failed us a lot before, but this time the ground is actually green, so that's not the issue. Then there were these blocks a bit into the level, which I can't step on or use the enemies to bounce across, although I can use the elephant power-up. Okay, so I might be gray in this case, but that doesn't count, so we can still get through all this. However, what will count is right at the finish, because there's a pipe leading to the Bowser Jr. fight. Of course, that would be the main form of entry. And he couldn't make it a fun color. It just had to be gray. So I guess we stop just before the first royal seed is obtained. How sad is that? What's interesting is we didn't get a lot of wins here, but I do remember having a lot of fun with this. There were some points where it felt like creative problem solving was kicked up a good amount, and it felt satisfying. It's just a lot of them never actually took us to the end of the game, since gray is of course that neutral color that you're gonna see in a lot of places. Any path made out of rocks is not your friend around here. Even the one victory we did get almost didn't happen and just worked because the game took away control from us right before that last stone is pulled up. Happy to at least not have a complete fail on this, but there is just one color left to attempt. Could this steal the crown at the last second, or will it make for a rough closeout? Let's see. Go ahead and have a look at white. What does the amazing starting game have for us? At first, a pretty good experience because we can make progress. We kind of went over this last time, but each stage theme at this point only has a set number of colors in it. And when it comes to the ground and underground themes, white is hardly a part of those at all. So everything up to the warps and all the levels in World 8 should be fine. Except the last one, because that castle theme is just what we don't want. You could argue that all the bricks bricks are pretty gray here, which I'd agree with, but I don't think I can look past these pipes. They are a bit lighter and bleed into the white territory, and we definitely cannot skip going down how many there are in this level. Unfortunate. Initially, there is a lot more confidence going into this game simply because the graphics are different and won't feature the same white bricks. I was expecting to have a little bit of a good run with this game, make a decent amount of progress, and then relate this level to how it's winter outside right now. It could be a very fitting end, which is why it was a bit anticlimactic to see this pull. Why must you make the required ending like this? Also, what's interesting is I noticed there's always two slivers of color, one for the pole itself and one for the shadow. Sometimes that shadow is yellow and sometimes pink, but either way, it's clearly showing the pole is meant to be taken as white, so too bad. Hopefully getting some upgrades and graphics going forward will work to our advantage, and this game seemed to be going well at first. Everything down on ground level was not gonna hold us up, but one realization I made is something that might just be our greatest enemy, the sky, because that's where clouds like to live. And I don't know if you can technically touch a cloud in real life, but you definitely can in the game. But it's okay, there's actually another path we can take through the cave. Also, I found out you can squeeze through one-block spaces by duck jumping in here. But even if we can reach the boss through this, it doesn't matter because said boss is Birdo, and you gotta throw eggs back to win this fight. Nothing else will work. Eggs can come in different colors, but these are the white ones, no doubt about it. This game gets slightly more complicated because of an important issue that I never like running into. So my strategy for this game is always to beat the first 2 levels, then get to the 3rd and grab a warp whistle. I'll just say I was proud of this jump to get over the note blocks, but after this, we're supposed to crouch on the white block to fall through and go into the background. But that's not an option this time, so our whole route gets thrown off. At least I could get a leaf and use it to fly up in the castle to get this warp whistle, and we're gonna have to use it right away because of the stage that directly follows. Guess we're seeing how far we can go in a World 4 now. Well, it is pretty fun platforming through all these, and there's even a hammer bro on the map that gives us a cloud power-up, which would become very useful in the fortress because of the ground you start on. Yes, this works because I don't count white on the overworld for these games. And surprisingly, every other level here went fine, and I made it all the way to the airships at the end. I thought I would be successful in beating it, and then this happened. The Koopaling's magic wand came down, and we have to grab it to finish. But real quick, look closely at it. Is that handle white? There's kind of an outline, but the main part does look to be white, and we do have to touch it. Is this enough to count as a fail? I mean, Mario does grasp it from that handle after picking it up, and the cutscene afterwards seems to remove that outline we saw, making the white even more obvious now. Small issue, but I think we're gonna have to say it's a no-go. I think we all know how this game goes based on past experiences, but let's run through it and see that there is no white for a little bit with these themes. World 1 has nothing that gets even close, and World 2 starts with semi-solid white platforms, but we're not touching those, just the black on top. But can't escape it forever, since the white does show up on these blocks in 2-2. SMW gets a little out of hand because there's some things similar to the Gray Challenge and some very much not. For example, this time we can't grab checkpoints. You wouldn't think that would play in too much, but as we reach level 3, we run into a problem. Last time, I didn't touch these platforms because they have gray, but I think it's also fair to say that they have white. So can we avoid them still? Well, last time I showed that we were able to by bringing over a Yoshi
Yoshi and dismounting to clear this group with a big jump. Then we're all good till the checkpoint, which before I grabbed to get another Yoshi at the spot. But we can't do that, so I needed a different method. And I found that you can build P-speed and angle yourself in the perfect way to make a big leap off this block all the way over. Then it takes another skill jump to get through all these, and turns out we can make it through. But it still ends in disappointment with the next stage being this. 1 foot starting on a white dot? Come on. Guess the only thing left to do is dance with the fishes. Honestly, most of the zones here are pretty free from anything that would get in our way. Usually there's one standout thing that stops us, but nothing was coming to mind here. I was starting to have hope that we would actually clear this. And then I reached the Mario zone, the ball stage to be exact. And there's one specific platform, these rotating ones that you use to go up. You have to use them since they're too tall, and they are striped in purple and white. So it seems there's no way for your foot to avoid it when going up. Afterwards, you could get the carrot to fly over the rest, but that won't help us vertically. Heading into our 3 dimensions, let's see if we can complete anything. Well, let's run to the castle and not worry about anything here since we determined the bridge is gray. And in the castle, we should be able to sneak around all of the white that is on the floor and even jump into the painting. But that does provide a problem because it doesn't matter what star we get here. Even if there is no white involved with getting that star itself, Mario's foot hits the square when he comes back out of the painting. He is not getting a very good score on that dismount, I can tell you that. But if you thought that was a quick finish, then check this out, because the runway on the airstrip is fully white. I suppose that's probably best for how sunny it is around here all the time, but not gonna go so great for us. Let's go back to this and see if things become any better. Well, I can try to tell you that it looks better since the main part of the level has nothing white to worry about, but what would you say about another flagpole being white? I know some of you are gonna try to tell me it's actually blue, but like before, I think that color on there is trying to represent a shadow. You could debate it, but I'm gonna have to call the main color of this one white. At the end of the day, not like it really matters since level 2 has these rocks underground with this on top, but it's still worth talking about. Can this return to 3D pick up any slack at all? Hey, we don't fail immediately because I'm calling this path more gray, so we can easily make it to the castle and eventually into space. But what do you do once up there? Just play a fun game of hide and seek with some rabbits, and you gotta catch them all, which isn't great because bunny's fur is a very common color, one that we must avoid. So yay! I'm interested to see how this one goes, because there's gotta be a 2D game where we could get further if the flagpole doesn't get in the way. We get our chance in this game since the pole here is gray, which means we can continue on and see what else is in store. And it was pretty simple to run to the level 3 secret exit and take the cannon. Same goes for World 5, as long as you avoid the piranha plants. The tower had nothing, the poison raft was clear, and the ghost house probably provided the biggest threat, but it was nothing impossible. This means we can get all the way to World 8 with basically no issue. However, I should bring up that once you get to the pole at the end of the World 8 stages, they kind of look to be more white than the earlier ones. I think it really is that debate of, can we say it's a different color just because the lighting is changed, or is it always what you see is what you get? I mean, here's the thing. It won't affect the end result, because if we do move on, the skull raft is off limits, so we can't take the secret route, but if we get all the way to the last stage, falling past these bone platforms is not gonna work. There's way too many of these in the sinking lava room that are just not avoidable because we need to stand somewhere.
hard to say how this game is gonna go, but I'm interested to find out. The intro actually goes pretty well, since the white on the edge of the screen is not gonna hurt us. And as we go towards the castle and step onto the bridge, we see that it is a bit darker. I'm calling this gray, and allowing us to launch into space. And you know what? Same goes for this rock, because I'm feeling that generous. But the issue is, if we keep going, we see ourselves circling this planet in the middle that we'll get to eventually, and it has an egg on it. Just like before, not something we would want to land on. Even if you don't want to count the first crack, the fact that we have to run around and spin it like this is not gonna work. Man, eggs also come in brown and sometimes even pink, but this is the most common and the one that we didn't want. This might be a 3D game, so you'd think we're back in business, but unfortunately not, since the exact same white pole is used. And look, I just want to say that I could touch the top of it, but Mario is still gonna have to touch the rest of that pole just after, whether it be his feet as he clings onto it or just while sliding. So this is not gonna work for us. Oh man, this one was actually really disappointing because there's a bunch of note blocks, and it was cool doing all of this to jump over everything and feeling like a gamer. But once again, the stupid pole is there trying to ruin it. You already know how many similarities there are between this game and the Wii version, so with that in mind, it's pretty easy to see how there's not a whole lot of white to watch out for through most levels. World 1 has absolutely nothing except, I guess, the bloopers in the secret stage, and we can skip right over to the jungle, which also goes pretty smoothly. I thought it would be a bit concerning once reaching the cloud levels, but turns out even though there is one here you're supposed to ride, an acorn suit can be used to fly over all the gaps. This does take a lot of skill and memorization for the blocks, but it is pretty cool. But honestly, I don't know why I would bother when you factor in the final castle again. You know those similarities that I was talking about? Well, the bone platforms make a return, this time on the collapsing bridge, which you will be forced to stand on thanks to the starting of the fight when you enter. After all this, you have to question, what's worse, getting all the way to the end and losing, or failing right away and never standing a chance? Because that second option is what we're gonna face. It's not even this, because we can do some platforming to go right over all the white wood. But what we can't avoid is the white flagpole at the end once again. Even if we climb it or jump to the top, it's not a good situation. And you know what? Things don't even get any better in this game, because you know how the last 2 times we've done this, the Cap Kingdom has held us up? That's because the theme is very dark, so black and gray is all over the ground. White is also there, but at least it's on the walls, and not something you stand on. Until we go inside Top Hat Tower, that is. Everyone knows this floor once you step inside, and there is no way to bypass it. And not to mention the white arena that would have to stand on even if we got up there. Man, the first few colors all failed because of the different colored moons. And then for the last few, it's just this kingdom. This one is definitely a very colorful game. Taking us into Lake Lapcat is cool because it could end up being more open world, and when you start, it's nighttime, so white shouldn't be very visible. But wouldn't you guess, right when the sun comes out, and right before we get to the open world state, there's this. Some white sand down below where we team up with BJR. We can try to go around, but it won't work, and it will force us to stand where we don't want. And finally, back to 2D, which we've had problems with before. This game does have a flagpole, but what is the verdict? With it being a console game, you might think that it ended up being gray, but sadly, it's not. This one is fully white and locking us out of any completion. What better finish could there be than an absolute classic for this color?
With how the last couple of colors went, I can't say I'm shocked about this. There's, of course, going to be white in a fair bit of places, just because of the amount of themes it fits into. And those flagpoles are absolute killers. This one never had a chance to take the top spot. So congratulations to Pink for holding on to that huge lead and taking the crown, which you might think wouldn't be the case since Peach is a main character around all of them. But I suppose it helps that she doesn't really come into play until after we've already officially beaten it. I think it's been really cool to look through all of these and go super in depth to find the answer. But one other thing I wanted to find out is not just which color was the most successful, but which game. Which game out of all 20 was beaten the most times in this video? Well, the older games definitely had a bit more of an advantage here, and the newer ones suffered a bit more. That's why there were a ton that never got cleared. Super Mario Land 2, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy 2, Super Mario 3D World, Super Mario Odyssey, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder all had no completions during this whole adventure. Every single color had to be touched in all 7 of those. Which is a shame, because those are some of my favorites. But the overall best game is none other than Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, with 5 different colors all evaded. Yep, the game in which I used a remake had the most success. You could call that cheating, but I think it's cool that we got a different answer from the original game, since the score probably would have been the exact same otherwise. That's a lot of data I've laid out here, and if you want to see even more, I'll place the full list of games and color successes in the description if you really want to see it all put together. With all that said, I think this video is long enough, and I've done a ton of work as it is. But I'll leave you with this. Getting to make all of these videos last year made it one of the best times of my life. These were seriously so fun to make, and it meant the world to me that so many people like to watch them. Which is why I really wanted to give it a proper send-off at the right time, but real life stuff got in the way and plans had to change, unfortunately. But all the same, I knew that I had to do the right thing and make this video now for it to have the goodbye it deserves. This might be the end of another chapter, but that means there's always a new one right around the corner. And I hope you're all ready for it, because it's just gonna keep getting better. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.